A magician casts a spell in an unknown language in an unknown place. He's surrounded by spectators who are watching in silence. Meanwhile, there are a huge number of high school students worldwide. In Korea alone, there are more than 150,000 of them. One of the many high school students was Gil Lee, and he thought it was not very interesting. His school was called School Number 3. It was a huge modern building. That day was a very ordinary class, with the students diligently taking notes on the teacher's explanations. Our hero was quietly bored over an open textbook. Nothing was interesting in his thoughts. His eyes slowly closed, and his head lowered closer and closer to the textbook. Suddenly a bright glow, in the form of shining circles with incomprehensible inscriptions, appeared around Gul Li. The glowing inscriptions expanded rapidly, and soon extended beyond the school. Everyone was amazed. Some students jumped up and down to see what was happening. Small objects like pins and headphones were flying into the air. The only question on everyone's mind was what was going on. Suddenly everything around him froze, and Yuli realized that time had stopped. A bottomless shining well opened up beside Yuli, and he was pulled in. He flew and flew. He screamed with fear and didn't know what was happening, and suddenly he found himself in a room of people clapping their hands joyfully. It was unclear who these people were, sitting on the floor in a ring of mysterious glowing symbols. Gil Li looked at the people around him and understood nothing. Two guys were standing across the street. They were talking in an unknown language. Listening to their conversation, Julie didn't know what they were talking about, but there was a clear realization that he was in huge trouble. One of the guys drew a complex glowing symbol in the air. It was a speech translator. "You understand me at last." Gil Li could understand someone else's speech. He heard what he heard, but the situation didn't become clearer. "If you know who I am," the mage asked Julie smugly. His name was Lear. Julie saw him for the first time, but maybe Lear knew him. Lear didn't know anything about Gully before either. The second mage, named Crisis, briefly noted the mental abilities of his companions. Lear replied that the Red Clan should not be considered overpumped morons after Crisis advised him not to be arrogant. He turned and disappeared from the hall. No one paid any attention to it. The Lear accepted congratulations from the remaining spectators. The spectators mouthed their congratulations and disappeared as well. They were left alone with Lear in a vast hall. Guile was amazed. He had never seen people disappear into thin air, and shared his delight with Lear. Lear waved his hand nonchalantly. "I see this every day." It was time to get to know each other. Everyone wanted to know who the other person was. Lear fully introduced himself. Lear is a great Red Dragon clan member. There are dragons in this world, and Lear was one of them. They were in Lear's lair on Dragon Mountain, on the continent of Arsenia, in another world, and this was no joke. Lear used magic to summon Gao Li into this world. To prove that the dragons of the Red Dragon clan are brilliant, he summoned Gao Li with a new kind of magic that didn't exist until Lear created it. The Golden Dragon Curses thought that red dragons were stupid. To prove that this was not true, Lear summoned Gao Li with the help of cross-dimensional magic. But Gao Li couldn't understand how his summoning to this world was proof of the Red Dragon's intelligence. How could he return home now? The thing is, when Lear made the call, he wasn't thinking about how he was going to bring back the summons. He was only thinking about how to draft someone. The fact that Lear wouldn't take him back upset Gully. He grabbed the magician by the lapels of his clothes and demanded to take him back. This process was interrupted by Crisis, returning and calling Lear to the Dragon Lord. Lear didn't want to go to the Dragon Lord but obeyed. Gil Li was left to wait for their return. Left alone, Gil Li wondered if he could even get home. The returning Lear was very angry. Lord Dragon had cursed Lear, and the Lord wanted Lear to be responsible for Guali now. And now Lear blamed Guali for what happened. Guali disagreed with the accusation anyway. Now Lear needed to bring Guali home. Otherwise the Lord would spread the rumor that Lear was stupid, which upset Lear. Julie was worried that he wouldn't be able to go home, but he wanted to go home. Julie didn't understand why Lear didn't want to bring him back. He's the one who summoned him here. Let him bring him back. It turned out to be complicated. There were several options for traveling between dimensions. The first variant, it was possible to move by teleporting to the mage himself. The second option was to move someone near the caster. A third option, you could call someone to the magician. There were only 3 different ways to travel between dimensions. So Lear could summon Gully, but he couldn't teleport him back. Gully didn't understand why Layer couldn't teleport him back, so he asked Layer. Layer replied that the process would take 50 years. Crisis said it could take 100 years to get Layer's head. The dragons were amused, but Julie was not amused at all. After all, in 50 years, he would grow old and die. But there are two other ways to get you back to your world. The first is to teleport you with interdimensional charms. The second way is for you to create an interdimensional gateway and walk through it to get home. Yahello was happy with that option. You could open the dimensional gate and go home yourself. I really want to bring you home, but that's impossible if I try to use magic. You'll die, so we have no choice. Gaily Layer has calmed down, and Gaily was put in front of the fact he must become a magician. He must learn magic and open the gate of dimensions himself. Otherwise, he won't be able to return home. Layer injected a mana-field crystal shard into Gaily's body. It was the first time Layer had performed such a procedure on a human, and he didn't know if there would be any complications, but the procedure was necessary. The mana invested in this crystal would allow 200 years of interpretation magic to be used on Gaoli. It inspired Gaoli. He decided that he would try to learn magic. The beautiful sorcerers of the Silver Dragon Order volunteered to teach Gaoli magic. She was so beautiful that Gilly forgot to let go of her hand. While he greeted her, a man from another world said, "Sir Pyres, I'm interested. My classes are strict, you don't mind, do you?" Gilly happily agreed to work hard to get home. Sir Pyres said, "Okay, so you'll have to keep up with your studies." Layer entered the conversation. "Julie, you want to study magic? Think about it. For spatial magic, you have to reach class 9. It's a long time. It may be better to wait until I create new magic." Layer asked, but Julie replied that it would be better for him to learn magic from Sir Pyres. "I only called her because you said you needed a teacher. You're pathetic. Try not to die." Layer told Gaoli to go on his way. They arrived at Sir Pyres. Layer Services explained that she had searched for various magic for different races and found universal formulas. This allows races to use the same spells with the same training methodology. With this methodology, Gully can quickly become a mage. Reaching the level of a third-class magician in 5 years is a level of genius. Reaching the 5th class is super genius. However, according to the Sir Pyres method, Guali can become a 5th-class master in 100 days. For Julie, the information was amazing, so they began their training. They gave painful mana injections. It would be painless to strengthen mana with regular training, but it was too slow for the Sir Pyres system. She prided herself on her powerful, standardized and condensed teaching method to maximize potential. The training was so excruciating that Gilly screamed and begged to be let go. But Sir Pyres was relentless. "Be patient, use your willpower," she said. "Don't you want to go home? You promised me you wouldn't give up. The 100 days are almost over," persuaded Sir Pyres. The teacher took care of Guali. She put him to bed before his new grueling classes. He was given balance capsules instead of food, including Sir Pyres teaching Julie the theory of magic. There are 3 ways to create magic. Spell action product. Sir Pyres told her one day it happened mana. Julie drew a circle and he became a first-class magician. From that moment on, Gao Li's training was supplemented by beating him with monsters to learn the basics of combat. Sir Pyres also trained Gao Li in elemental magic like fire and ice. Gradually I got better and better. Training with monsters was no longer like beating up Gao Li. He had already successfully confronted them. During Julie's meditation, he successfully summoned mana circles, and Sir Pyres was pleased with him. And it finally happened. He had graduated. Sir Pyres congratulated him. "You can now be considered a full-fledged wizard." With the help of Sir Pyres' intensive method, Julie reached 5th grade. From then on, he had to work independently to achieve greater results. Sir Pyres gave Julia a magical staff. The staff contains a mana stone with a mana amplification and magic aid spell. You had to channel mana into the stone and say a spell. Then you can use magic directly without delay. And a hidden sword was in the hilt of the staff made of dragon bone. It was the Sir Pyres' reward for Gully's 100 days of hard work. Gully was happy he had done it. He had become a magician and he liked Sir Pyres' gift. It was a treasure. Surprises sent Gully back to Layer's lair. They agreed to meet again. After all, Gully is Sir Pyres' apprentice. Sir Pyres wished him good luck. "You're not dead yet." These were the words that greeted Julie Layer. Julie was indignant. "You knew about her training method and still sent me to her." Layer replied, You liked that your teacher was a woman and wanted to go yourself. Gil Li had nothing to say. He was frustrated that despite working so hard, he only made it to 5th grade. 9th grade seemed so far away. Lyre discussed it with the Serpires, and they found a way to upgrade Gil Li. He had to get a dragon heart. Dragons have 2 hearts. The first heart is for blood. The second heart is responsible for mana. The second heart is called the dragon heart. Lyre told Gua Li that 1,000 years ago, an old dragon named Acreon passed away. He was called the Dragon of Light. He belonged to a clan of green dragons. Usually when a dragon goes to the other world, the mana of its heart returns to great nature. But the Dragon of Light cut his dragon heart into 4 pieces before he left this world, and sent them to different places on the continent of Arsania. These parts are called the Dragon's Tears. Lyre finished his story. Gao Li didn't understand why Lyre was telling him this. Gao Li can reach 9th grade if he can collect these 4 pieces. But Lyre didn't know the exact location of the dragon heart pieces. He only knew they were somewhere on the continent. This upset Gilly, and he offered to give Lyre his heart. He disagreed. But Lyre had created a dragon heart mana detection device. To aid the search at this point, Lyre sent Gilly to find parts of the dragon heart. He teleported him to a place unknown to Gilly. Upon landing, Gilly was angry at Lyre, who had summoned him and made him suffer. At that moment, Lyre, who had forgotten to give Gilly the insignia of a nobleman, the coat of arms of the Marquis of Durfam. 150 years ago, Lyre had served as a knight in the Elwyn Kingdom. He made a significant contribution to the kingdom. Lyre was given the title of Marquis with the ring. Julie was to be recognized as one of the Marquises of Dervan's family. But Lyre didn't know if the Durfan family still existed, since he hadn't been there since. But Julie must go there. That's where Lyre left a great sword called the Black Stream. There should be a piece of the dragon heart in its hilt. But Julie didn't understand why he left it there. Then the Black Stream sword was of no use to Lyre. Lyre repeated goodbye and teleported Jelly away. Without further explanation, the last thing Jelly heard was that he needn't worry, because someone would help him. He was upset when he found himself where Lyre Julie had sent him. He didn't know where he was, and he had nothing, not even money or a map. He was walking through the forest when he heard the sounds of fighting. Gao Li went in the direction of the noise and saw a girl, almost a girl, fighting against the orcs. She's just a child, she can't defeat the orcs, Gully exclaimed and ran to help. He defeated one orc when he saw the girl didn't need help. She could take on the orcs with ease, and they ran away from her screaming for help. The girl fought with amazing skill and the orcs could not escape her. The girl chased the enemies with war cries. The girl exhaled in satisfaction as she finished hunting the orcs. She thought she had passed the time well. I saw Gao Li and asked him who he was, and if he was on the side of the orcs. The girl wanted to ask what Gao Li was doing here, but then she remembered something, and asked Gao Li why he had taken so long. She was waiting for him. That surprised Gao Li. How did the girl know him? She said she heard about him from her dad. At first he didn't know which daddy he was talking about, but then he noticed the girl's resemblance to Lyre, and guessed she was Lyre's daughter. They met. The girl's name was Lucy and she was a half-elf. Gilly introduced himself as well. They went together to the human world. They came to a human city in the lands of Kondet. Gilly walked through the town, and thought reading books about the human world would be worth it. Lucy talked about the city. A cart passed by carrying something that smelled bad. Lucy explained that there were many monster hunters in this town, because this land is close to Dragon Mountain. Hunters sell monster parts. These parts look ugly but can be compared to tuna for sale. The girl wanted to eat, but Gully stopped her. He had no money and wanted to know if Lucy had money. It turned out that Lucy had left her jewelry behind, and had only taken small coins. It would take 3 or 4 months to get the money back home. They decided to find a place to sleep first and then go out to eat. Lucy had a great appetite, and Gully heard the conversation at the following table. They said the mercenaries would leave the city after they were paid, and they were discussing whether the mercenaries could negotiate with the Lord. 2 people asked to join Julie and Lucy at the table. The mercenary Macon and his comrade Alicia. She was a priest when they met. Macon noticed that Julie didn't look like a mercenary. Julie said he was just a traveler. Julie asked Macon what was going on in the tavern. He heard outraged shouts and speeches from different directions. Then Macon told me that 5 months ago, monsters from Dragon Mountain attacked the village of Jathan, which was part of the land of Kondet. to protect the village. Lord Condemned hired a large number of mercenaries, and a great many mercenaries have left this world to defend the town. The contract fee was small, but the mercenaries counted on the profits from selling monster parts. Megan continued the story, but the Lord took all the money, and did not compensate the mercenaries who left this world. At that moment, a squad entered the tavern and formed a formation at the entrance. Guile Lee warned everyone to be quiet. After the soldiers, a nobleman entered the tavern. He introduced himself as Lord Condemned's son. Ranald Paul Condemned, he's coming to announce his father's will. Regarding the mercenary pay situation, the Lord has decided to pay the mercenaries double what he promised, but only until tomorrow. They refused to pay the dead because they didn't do their will. The people in the inn murmured. Ranald Paul Condemned shouted for silence. Anyone who complained about the Lord's decision would go to prison. Then Alicia stood up and said, many people had gone to the other side, because they'd been given the wrong assignment. The mercenaries were fighting under the Lord's orders, and the rest of the mercenaries are witnesses to it. Let the Lord not try to lie, and the Lord must pay the money for the slain in their memory. The rest of the mercenaries in the end supported her. Let the Lord pay for the slain, and give the profits from selling the monster parts. Ranald Paul Condemned came to Alicia, and said he was willing to pay money for the dead, but only if she played with him and did some things he would pay for. An outraged Alicia slapped the Lord's son. She resented him for daring to say such a thing to a priestess. Then Ranald Paul Condemned became enraged. How dare she strike his aristocratic face, and ordered Alicia to be captured. But then Yahello stood up, shielded Alicia and slapped Ranald Paul Condemned. He was angry and ordered his guards to arrest them. The indignant Gil Lee thought unfavorably of the Lord's heir. He should realize that he shouldn't provoke the mercenaries like that. It could end badly at that point. The inept Ranald Paul Condemned angrily ordered the demolition of this building, and its inhabitants. Lucy sprang into action. In a leap, she stamped her foot into Ranald Paul Condemned's face with a crunch. To Julie's horror, Lucy began to raise her fists at the Lord. He couldn't understand who she was or why she treated him like this. The mercenaries stepped in. They would not listen to the Lord's ramblings and stand aside. The mercenaries fought against the Lord's soldiers. Only the innkeeper and his maid stood aside, and worried about the integrity of their establishment. Looking at all of this, Julie was worried that various unforeseen situations had been occurring since he got here. He just calmly wanted to go back home. The Lord's heir to Lucy's actions was loudly outraged. He shouted that he was royalty and would not let it go, and he called for help. One of Ranald Paul Condemned's soldiers swung a spear at Lucy, but Gale Lee hit him with a lightning strike spell. The spell hit a few more soldiers. The people around him were surprised to see a magician there. Gale Lee advised the people present to continue their actions. Without paying attention to him, the soldier's commander ordered you all to attack, because he thought he wouldn't be able to use another magic right away. However, Julio used a fireball to surprise the people around him, and neutralize the soldiers. The soldiers realized he was dangerous. All the soldiers were tied up, and Lucy said she was in a better mood. Macon and Alicia approached Julio and thanked him for his help. The other mercenaries also thanked him. Alicia healed the traumatized through divine power. Ranald threatened everyone with terrible punishment if the Lord discovered what happened there. Turns out that one of the warriors from the guards managed to escape, and now the Lord will find out what happened here. Everyone wondered what to do now. Gil Lee took out the device Lair had given him to detect parts of the dragon heart, and started it up. The device was showing something, but Gil Lee didn't understand what it meant. While he was dealing with the device, the mercenaries were discussing what to do. Someone suggested closing the door. Lucy suggested separating the Lord's head from his son, but Gilly didn't think it was a good idea. The ruler will come here with an army as soon as he finds out about his son, said Megan, and the Lord's army arrived. A squad of knights came to fetch the heir Reynolds. The head of the team was the head of the Lord's guard. His name was Sir Campbell. The mercenary men put Yul Lee on the negotiating table. They trusted and respected him, and Yul Lee realized that he couldn't turn back now. The Lord's chief of security immediately accused Gil Lee and the mercenaries of attacking the crown prince and his guards, even though Gil Lee tried to explain that Reynolds provoked the mercenaries. First, the security chief didn't want to listen to him. Then Gul Lee began to say that Reynolds had insulted the priestess. At that moment, He felt something wrong behind him and activated his night vision. On the roof of the building, he saw soldiers ready to attack. Yahello hit them with magic missiles. It was a cunning plan to rescue Reynold, distract the mercenaries with conversation, while the soldiers used the roof to get into the inn and free him. The setback did not deter Knight Campbell. He ordered the soldiers to attack the tavern and the mercenaries. Julie used the firewall to stop the soldiers from entering the hotel. When Reynold heard help arriving, he screamed to be rescued. Lucy put a blade to his throat and commanded him to be quiet, and told him to withdraw his knights. Reynold had to order his knights to stop the attack. Macon appeared carrying a man on his shoulder, and announced that he had brought the Lord. It was time to negotiate. Julie explained to Knight Campbell that they should have just talked from the beginning, and now everything should be discussed calmly a few hours ago. Anticipating that the wars of Reynold were about to come for Julie, the mercenaries made a plan on how to proceed. The mercenary Macon and his companion Alicia had a separate mission. They were tasked with stealing the Lord. Cromwell took it upon himself to gather all the mercenaries and coordinate a plan of action with them. He was in charge of the Mercenary Guild, branch of the Kingdom of Contempt. He said it would be hard enough for him to coordinate with everyone, but seeing how much golly Cromwell does for them, he can't stand by. Lucy was tasked with extracting information about the residents from Reynolds' heir. Lucy gladly accepted, and partners McKinn and Alicia were tasked with kidnapping the ruler. Many mercenaries gathered outside the inn. The ruler was also at Yulee and the mercenaries. Knight Campbell couldn't do anything with all his might. Began negotiations with the governor. They made conditions. One was to pay the money for the work. The second was to compensate the families of those who had left this world. The third condition was to forget about today's incident. That's how Reynolds started it. But the governor flatly refused to fulfill all three conditions. Alicia contradicted him as a result of his command. More than 100 people have left this world. She couldn't save the wounded. She couldn't even save her close friend Kale. Then the Lord began to make his conditions. For example, he agreed to forget about today's incident. He refused to pay with money. Gilly didn't understand why this Lord was so greedy. The mercenaries began to stir. There were outcries of outrage everywhere, including some suggesting that the Lord should be sent to the afterlife. Lucy yawned loudly. She was bored and wanted to sleep. She drew her sword and offered to separate the Lord's head from his torso. If he didn't comply, Reynold confirmed to his father that this elf woman dared to separate her head. Then the Lord offered his suggestion. The Lord has offered to settle the dispute in a duel. If he loses, he will honor their demands. And if they lost, the Lord would not pay a penny. Yulee was indignant at this suggestion. After all, the Lord had promised to pay the mercenaries long ago. The Lord then suggested this solution. If he loses the duel, he pays double. And if the mercenaries lose, he pays nothing. He agrees not to be punished for today's events. But if the mercenaries lose, he will have to work for a year as a mage for guile. The mercenaries enthusiastically accepted the proposal. Despite Julie's protests, they had already begun discussing the duel's terms with the Lord. No one listened to Julie's protests. He didn't understand how everything had been reduced to a duel, and why he would have to pay the price if he lost. He suspected that there was something to the dueling idea, but they wouldn't listen to him. Even Lucy was pleased. She thought dueling was so much fun. And Yahello was also embarrassed by the Lord's delighted look. He looked like a man who was up to something. He also resented that, according to the rules, a mage couldn't participate in a duel. What angered him most was that the outcome of the negotiation was that he should sit back and see whether or not he would become an enslaved person. For a year, the list of duelists was as follows. Knight Rowell fought against Cromwell. Knight Campbell against Kyle. Knight Romsbull against McCann. Against Lucy was placed Lily, and against Rocky Osborne. Yahello wondered if anyone had heard of Lily and Osborne, who they were, or if they could win. But it was time to go. Looking at the large number of people who came to watch the duel, Yahello thought that the rumors of the duel spread very quickly. The Lord was very pleased. He asked Gowley how he slept. He was recommended to get a good night's sleep, because he'll be working for the Lord starting today. Felix, the elf judge, came onto the field. She explained the rules of the duel. One of the teams must win 3 rounds out of 5. If someone wants to surrender during the battle, they must throw their weapons on the ground. The referee announced the first fight. sitting next to the joyful Lord. Gilly thought they should win. The first round has been announced. Knight Rowell versus Cromwell. Cromwell entered the ring and waited for his opponent, who was delayed finally. The gate on the opposite side of the arena opened, and out rode a knight in full armor. On a horse shot in armor, Knight easily took Cromwell out of the arena, and said he would have taken his life if not for the rules of the duel. To Guile Lee's outrage, the fight should be one-on-one without a horse. The Lord replied that the knight should be mounted, and the mercenary could mount a horse. Then Gil Lee went to the referee. The judge explained that the only rule in this fight was to win. 3 rounds out of 5 she gave the Lord the victory. In the second round, Kyle, the mercenary, was defeated by Knight Campbell, who was declared the winner. With 2 victories, the Lord rejoiced. He ordered Lily to be released to finish the contest and win for good. Jewel Lee was outraged. Lily should have been in the 4th round, and Lord had changed the order of the fights. But from the arena, Lucy waved to him reassuringly. She didn't care what order to bat in. Gully was a little relieved that Lily was a woman's name. When Lucy faced a giant troll, Gully was outraged and Lord was pleased. To him, Lily looked encouraging. Lucy was the only one who was calm. She yawned and asked for a quick start. But Gil Lee was still worried about Lucy. After all, she would have to fight against a troll. The Lord ordered the fight to start quickly, and they began to fight. Troll Lily grinned and ran toward Lucy. Lily drew her sword and waited calmly for the troll to reach her. The troll brought its club down on the spot where Lucy was standing. But Lucy was no longer there. She leaped over the troll woman. With her sword bared, she cast a spell and the sword burst into flames. There were cheers in the stands. It was a sword of fire, the magic sword. Lucy easily defeated Lily, the troll, with her flaming sword. She wondered if she'd done it too easily. Lord was desperate. He'd invested in Lily's crowd, and after this fight Lily would never fight again. The mercenaries were amazed at the ease with which Lucy struck the troll. They decided that this elf was a very tough girl. The Lord was outraged and demanded that Lucy be disqualified for using a magic sword. Gilly remarked that putting a troll in the fight was abnormal. The angry Gilly demanded the referee to make a decision. After all, the basic rule of the fight had not been broken. The judge thought for a moment, but declared Lucy the winner. Gil Lee was very happy and congratulated Lucy on her victory. Lucy's sword was a birthday present from Lair. Gil Lee thought that the sword had such properties, so Lair must have made it from his bone. And the Lord was angry and wanted to challenge the judge's decision. He feared Lucy's sword would be passed on to the next warrior. But Lucy said Daddy made the sword, so only Lucy could use it. The Lord began to worry about the outcome of the fights, and told the next battle to call Osman. Mr. Osman came in. It turns out he's a magician. The Lord ingratiatingly referred to Osman as the Lord and you, and asked him to step out of his turn to fight. But Osman refused to join the line. He told the governor that they had the advantage, and he would be the last one out. The mercenaries were talking anxiously. It wasn't fair. Fighting against a mage wasn't easy, and Rocky was unlikely to win against a mage. Lucy approached McCann and asked if he could handle it. McCann told her not to worry. He had a secret weapon. I have announced the 4th round night. Rumsfeld versus McCann. McCann has entered the arena. McCann entered the arena unarmed. The spectators noticed this and began to worry. An armored knight rode into the arena and asked Mackin if he thought he was weak. And Mackin said they would find out now. Mackin was changing. He was covered with fur. His claws grew and his body proportions changed. Mackin turned out to be a Vertigar. Vertigars are a race of werewolves, in battle form resembling man and tiger. The knight's horse was frightened, and then Mackin lunged at the knight to attack. He leaped at the knight in a very long jump. The knight was astonished. He thought it was impossible. He knocked the knight off his horse and defeated him. As the knight Romspley could not continue the fight, Mackin won. The mercenaries and McCann rejoiced. The Lord shouted indignantly to Joel Lee that using reincarnation was unfair and wrong. Joel Lee replied that if a troll can duel, then people with special abilities can too. When McCann returned to the mercenaries, he was greeted with cheers. Lucy said that he was cool and she didn't know it, and the Lord was furious. He called the mercenaries crooks and shouted that his team must win. I ordered the final duel to begin now. The referee announces the final round. Osborne versus Rocky Osborne. The magician entered the arena. That has angered Joel Lee. He thought the Lord had broken the rule. If Joel Lee couldn't participate, then no other magician could. but the Lord said he had changed the rule. Since the rules had changed and a mage was allowed to perform, nothing stopped Zhou Li from participating in the duel, and he jumped into the arena. To Lord's indignation, that the application form listed a man named Rocky. Zhou Li said that his full name was Rocky, but the Lord wouldn't stop resenting him. He pointed at the mercenary, and said that Rocky was that mercenary, and that he should duel according to the list. Zhou Li replied that his name was Rocky, which is more likely than the troll's name Lily, and added whether the Lord was worried that the mage, speaking for him, would lose. The signal to start the round sounded. Gale Li and the magician Osborne stood opposite each other in the arena. The magician asked Julie why he was dueling. The magician himself spoke at the Lord's request. This question made Julie think about how it came to be that he, a Dragonheart Shard Seeker, was standing in the arena and had to fight a mage. A short and thoughtful reply from Julie did not satisfy Osmond, and he voiced his indignation and immediately attacked him. To show him what he could do, a magical duel began. Osmond sent magic arrows at Guli. Gul Li took out his magic wand and put up a shield. A bright glow from Osmond's attack appeared around Gul Li. The boy's silhouette was vaguely visible through the glow, under the protection of the magic sphere. Gul Li successfully survived Osmond's attack. The magician Osmond thought respectfully of his rival, that he could not only talk the talk, so he sent a fire arrow spell at him. But Julie didn't just stand there and send an ice harpoon towards the fire arrow. The two spells met and there was a massive explosion. Osmond responded with two spells, Water Blast and Lightning Strike. He encased the lightning in a water ball. Such a thing is available to a mage of at least a 5th level. Gale Li responded to this with a snowstorm spell and lightning defense, and when Osmond's double spell reached Gale Li, he successfully countered it. Mage Osborne did not expect such a young age to be able to resist his double spell, and was shocked. He thought his rival was hiding his abilities. Gale Li mentally thanked his mentor, Sir Piers, for her gift of staff and a magic stone. They had helped him a lot. The enraged magician cast his fire blast spell on Gilly. The audience empathizes with the young man, attacked with such powerful and dangerous magic. The very evil magician Osborne believed that Gilly would leave this world, unable to resist his powerful spell. But Gua Li, standing in the center of the fire elemental, used the dissipation spell, and the fire blast raging around Gua Li dissipated. In the center stood a completely unharmed Gua Li. Magician Osmond was very much surprised. He thought what his opponent had done was impossible. He realized he had underestimated him and was a 5th-class mage. And the boy said calmly that he had many more surprises, and enough to repel Osmond's blows. Gil Li retaliated by throwing a fireball at Osmond to try and catch. Osmond cast a dispersion spell on the fireball, but nothing changed. The spell didn't work at the last moment. Osmond could put up the shield and take cover behind it. Osmond had never heard of such a mage before Gio Li came into his life, and he couldn't understand who he was or where he came from. While Gio Li fought in the arena, he remembered Sir Pyre's lessons. She was explaining the theory. The father of magic, the dragon elves, fairies and werewolves learned magic from the dragon. A person learned magic from one of these races. By getting knowledge from one of these races, one can get not only knowledge but also learn complex techniques. Usually people who study magic get good results, and Gao Li was on his way to that. But at that time Julie Li, who was exhausted by the torturous training, did not care about theory. He suffered greatly and sought only to leave the training. Then Sir Pyres wondered why he wasn't diligent, but he continued to teach him theory. Thinking back to the training moments, Zhou Li wondered why he was studying all this. While Osmond was thinking, he had not seen such a technique in other mages, and believed that a mage could have an abnormal technique, but it was challenging to develop. But Gil Li interrupted Osmond's thoughts. He told him that someone was talking too much and he must be nervous. Osmond then decided to hit the insolent opponent with a special technique of elemental magic, and directed ice magic at Gilly. Since Osmond was a 5th-level wizard, he created a powerful spell. But this spell was not the ultimate in power. So in response to his opponent's attack, Gilly created a technique similar to fire magic. Ice magic and fire magic met in the middle of the arena. It was a grand spectacle in the stands. The spectators were frantic. For the magician Osborne, it was frustrating that his opponent was able to replicate his technique, but he was still not going to give up. since the techniques used by the magicians were of the same class. The opponent's mana reserves determined the winner, and Gil Li understood that. He determined that his opponent was maxing out, and added more mana to his spell. Fire magic and ice magic fought fiercely in the arena. The fire magic became stronger and crushed the ice magic. It shattered into splinters. Osmond shouted, standing amidst the shards of crumbling ice magic. Julie came up to him and demanded that he surrender. He wanted to finish the fight, and Osmond thought he lost to a Sage Tower apprentice, a member of the inner circle of the tower. For someone as old as Gale Li, that's a big score due to his specific magical education. Gale Li had never heard of the Tower of Sages. He asked if his opponent would admit defeat. He conceded defeat and bowed his head to Yahello. The Lord was on the rostrum, shouting at Osborne that he must not surrender. But no one listened to the Lord. The victory was awarded to Gilly. The jubilant mercenaries congratulated him vigorously. After accepting the congratulations, Gilly turned to the Lord and demanded that he fulfill the terms of the agreement, since the mercenary side had won, and repeated the terms of compensation. 60 coins for those who have left this world. Payment for monsters 20 coins. It was unbearable for the Lord. He felt evil about losing the duel, and the mercenaries were going to celebrate the victory at the end. Meanwhile, Gilly had lost Lucy. He looked for her, and found her sleeping peacefully in the room under the bleachers. He gently woke her up and told her they had won, and it was over. The boys took their share of the winnings and went on their way. They padded down the road and talked. Lucy was a little worried that they had left without saying goodbye. On the way, Lucy told me what she'd read in books about duels, and Gilly listened to her attentively. They heard someone catching up. Horses stamping and the sound of a wagon moving. A traveling carriage pulled by a pair of horses caught up with them. Alicia and McCann were there. They rebuked the boys for leaving without saying goodbye. They said that all the mercenaries were grateful to them and wanted to thank them. They told us that everything had been settled, that Cromwell had given everyone their money, and sent the remaining mercenaries home, and asked where the boys were going. Jill Lee thought for a moment. He said that they were going to the northeast first. The mercenaries rejoiced they were on their way. They were on their way to the shrine of Krangus, and they offered to go with them. She had already entered the carriage, and was glad she didn't have to walk. Joel Lee thought that he and Lucy were traveling for the first time, and could use an escort, so he agreed to Macon and Alicia's proposal. After getting into the carriage, Gully took out a device to detect parts of the dragon heart. It was pointing to the northeast. When she saw Gully checking the device, Lucy noticed it was useless for long distances. Gully didn't know that, but Lucy told him she would feel the dragon heart, so he wouldn't doubt Lair. There's a reason Lyre sent her on the road with Tsuli. Then Tsuli thought he would always have to be with this troublemaker. Tsuli attempted to send Lucy to her parents. He told Lucy that her mom was worried about her, if Lucy wanted to visit her mom. To this, Lucy replied that while Lucy was traveling, Mommy was having a good time with Daddy. That upset Tsuli. He thought that Lair was improving his space travel magic while traveling, and that Lear was having fun. Since the wagon was shaking constantly, Julio felt sick and nauseous. He had to lie with his head in Alicia's lap to get used to the bumpiness of the road, but it was more comfortable. Alicia concluded that Julio had never ridden in a wagon. Mackin looked into the carriage and asked if Julie had come from the Tower of Wise Men. Osmond asked Julie the same thing. Julie asked the mercenaries what the Tower of the Sages was. The mercenaries were surprised. The mage didn't know about the Tower of the Sages, but he told them it's a massive tower. It's in the center of the continent. There are many mages there. They do research. Then there's the Academy of Magic, where 7 magicians teach their students, who are called the Inner Circle. The Inner Circle representatives of the Tower of Mages are mostly mages of Gale Lee's age. Gale Lee thought McCann knew a lot, so he asked him if he knew anything about the dwarfs. They are in the kingdom of Elwyn. Then Macon took out a map and showed it to Gwail Lee. He said that they were now in the kingdom of Armenia. It showed the state of Kudrin next to the kingdom of Elwyn. They're heading towards Krangus. Macon clarified that Darfin was in the kingdom of the Elwyn family. Lil Lee confirmed that the teacher had told him so. As he looked at the ring, Gully thought, I hope the device points to Darfin and everything will be okay. He asked his traveling companions why they were going to crown Gus. Alicia had a divine assignment. She's been given a divine request to fulfill and is on her way. Lucy interrupted the conversation by saying she was hungry. It was late, so they stopped for a rest. We cooked food at the camping site and everyone had a hearty meal. We then discussed the way ahead. The next town was 4 days away. Their next stop would be Huajiangmen village. Lucy clarified that they had left so quickly that they did not have time to stock up on provisions. Lucy suddenly stopped eating and became alert. She warned that someone was coming toward them. A man came out of the woods. He said he was traveling. He was walking by and noticed a campfire, so he asked permission to join them. He added that he was a mercenary and would like to travel with mercenaries like himself. But Lucy replied that there were 5 others with him. The traveler replied that they must have been too noisy, and suddenly threw a knife at Gully. He didn't have time to react, but Lucy wrestled the knife away. She called Gully a sheep and drew her sword. Gully put up his shield. The rest of the bandits came running out of the forest. They shouted that they should be the first to take the wizard's life, and not leave the woman alive. The angry Gao Li fired first defense missiles, and then death cloud at the bandits. The bandits were surprised by Gao Li's skill and fled into the forest. The travelers remained standing in a protective formation. Gilly asked who could see well in the dark. Lucy and McCann could see well too. Gilly used the water balloon spell to put out the fire. They stayed in the dark and went to catch up with the bandits. The poison cloud spell hit some brigands, and they felt bad. One of the bandits was struck by Gale Li with a magic arrow. At this time he was attacked from behind by another bandit. Gale Li's wind gust spell blew away this bandit. One bandit tried to run away, but was caught by Lucy. They gathered the defeated bandits in a clearing, and began to wonder who they were. They decided that the king of Condent could not have sent such weak opponents. I decided to ask the bandits themselves. The bandit leader immediately started threatening, saying that they dared to touch the Black Brotherhood, and would regret it. Lily intervened, and explained to the brigand that she needed to elaborate. It turns out the brigands were working for the Black Magicians. They kidnapped people and forced them to work in the mines. They came across Gilly's company and decided to rob them, and Megan remembered they'd missed one bandit. Perhaps the Black Magicians might come. This was the first time Gilly had heard of black mages. Turns out that Lucy hated black magicians. She thought they did unforgivable things. And for Gully they explained the situation. Normal magicians had to use mana to cast spells, and black magicians only need to make a deal with the devil. They sell the souls of others. They get power for it. They are despised and feared by all. The black magi especially valued the souls of elves. They had more life force in them. Lucy hated black mages for this reason too. That's when Guile finally realized that Lucy was an elf. He thought she was a dragon who pretended to be more than an elf. He thought so hard about who she was that Lucy herself approached him and told him to think less, because she already had to be rescued by Julie today. Julie thanked the puzzled Lucy gratefully. They were deciding what to do next. Alicia had to report the black magicians to the temple. Mackin suggested that they go to the village first. He had an acquaintance there, but Lucy wanted to sleep. She suggested sleeping first and then thinking about what to do next. They went to bed and Mackin stayed behind to watch as Gully fell asleep. He thought about how he would have handled the situation without studying magic, about wanting to go home and whether he can adapt to his school again, and if there's a school for mages in the morning. Gully had a hard time getting up. He was not used to sleeping on the ground and his back hurt. They set off. The bound robbers followed the carriage. They reached the village, which was protected. The Who guard stopped the wagon, asked who they were. Macon answered, to whom the head of the village came down to them. His name was Craig. He pleased Macon and Alicia. It was their former mercenary comrade. He was especially excited about Alicia. He needed her help. They had a badly wounded comrade and they could not help themselves. And Alicia, as a clergyman, had a chance to heal the sick man. Craig led the way to the ill man, while Alicia examined the wounded man in serious condition. 2 people, a girl and a boy, were at the patient's bedside. To not disturb Alicia, they left the room and continued their acquaintance. The girl's name was Jenny. She was also a mercenary. Gil Lee thought the girl was very pretty, especially when she smiled. The young magician's name was Luki. He could use healing magic. Gao Li had identified him as a 4th-grade mage. Gao himself couldn't use healing magic. Luki said that healing magic could only be used by experienced mages. But Yuli remembered what Sir Pirate said. The type of magic is chosen. according to the mage's preferences and abilities. If a mage chooses healing magic, other types of magic will be weak and ineffective. This is why priests mostly prefer it. And Gully told Lucky so if you chose healing magic, the power of the other types would be insignificant. Lucky replied that he knew a lot for a beginner, and Gully asked Lucky why he thought he was a beginner. Lucky replied that at Gully's age, he could hardly be a mid-level mage. Gilly was indignant because Lucky didn't look any older than him. The young mages stood across from each other and actively thought how much they disliked each other. Alicia, meanwhile, was using divine magic to heal the wounded man. His wounds were gradually healing, and Jenny told me that black magicians had been discovered near the village. Luke has been assigned to investigate the area. Jenny and Leo, who were wounded, accompany Luki. They told McKin what they had learned yesterday. It had to do with a stone mine in Bane Mountain, and they had 3 other mercenaries. They were captured. This information surprised Megan. Although he knew the stone mines were government property, he thought the black magicians were up to something. Very importantly, the stone mine was very close to the village, and it was expected that the black magicians would come here again. Craig approached Megan and discussed where they could get fighters to defend the village. Yuli had a headache and decided to rest. He had difficulty adjusting to the new world, with its black magicians and other problems. He wanted to give up and go home. He was thinking about how much he missed ramen and black sauce noodles. When he heard a noise in the bushes, he yelled for the one hiding there to come out. A girl timidly came out of the bushes. Julie was surprised that it was a lonely child. The girl's name was Marie. She asked to touch Julie's magic rod. To cheer up the girl, Julie called out flickering lights. The twinkling lights amused Marie. She smiled and jumped after them. Gilly asked Marie why she was alone and where her parents were. The girl started crying. She said that her parents were attacked by bandits and left the world. Gilly was confused. To distract Marie, he created an illusion of an earthly merry-go-round. Marie liked the merry-go-round. She stopped crying and asked Gully what it was. Gully explained to Marie that it was a merry-go-round in another world. Marie looked at the carousel and said she wanted to study magic to avenge her parents. Lucy came to find out who had hurt the girl. The girl saw Lucy's elf ears and asked to touch them. Lucy flatly refused. The child Gaio Lee stepped in and urged her to let him touch her ears, but Lucy was adamant and wouldn't let her touch her ears, and Gaio thought Lucy was very uncooperative. However, he wanted to touch her ears too. Jenny called them. Alicia had finished treating Leo. They had to go over to the others. Suddenly Marie got upset and ran away from the boys. They didn't realize what was wrong. Gulai hoped that the girl had a home and ran home. The healed Leo was already sitting on his bed, talking to Jenny about his friends who had been captured. He thought about what had happened to them in captivity, but Jenny wasn't happy about it. She suggested that they must have left the world by now, and Leo himself would have gone after his friends if Alicia hadn't helped him. Then he asked Luca if the mage who had hurt Leo had been caught, but Luki shook his head in the negative. Leo whined by catching the black mage. They could avenge their comrades. He started to get up. Alicia warned the mercenary not to exert himself. He thanked her for saving him, but now he had to act suddenly. There was a great noise outside. Everyone listened and jumped outside. The village was on fire. Someone had set it on fire. Jolie remembered Marie. How she's a little girl alone in a burning village. And I ran to find Marie. The mercenaries were deciding what to do next. Megan said they would take care of the villagers. Luki was eager to fight and Jenny was to guard Luki. In a situation like this, Leo couldn't lie down to recover. He went to help as well. Alicia was on Alicia to help the wounded. At this time, Guile was walking through the blazing, ruined village and called out to Marie. He heard shouting and saw 2 bandits holding Marie and arguing about whether she should be killed or not. One bandit said that they had orders to take everyone's life. The second bandit said it might still be helpful for experiments or sacrifices. But Jolie scattered the bandits with the air bomb spell and shouted to Marie to run to him. And Marie ran up to him and called him brother. A ring of armed bandits surrounded them. One of the bandits said that it was the magician they had been told about and that he should be killed. But Gil Lee wasn't going to wait for the bandits to act. He sent a mystic energy blast to the bandits. Marie was hiding behind his back. The bandit leader commanded them not to retreat and to stop his magic. Lucy stood next to the bandit and advised him to finish quickly. Then she drew her sword and it was as if she had turned into a tornado of many Lucys. She moved so fast that she struck at the bandits. Before the lightning strike spell hit them, some bandits noticed these children were quite strong. Lucy and Jenny came to the rescue. Lucy asked Lucy if she was all right, and Julie was glad that Jenny had come to help. Marie was hiding behind Julie, holding on tightly to his clothes about Luke. Julie thinks a bunch of villains surround him, and Lucy's only worried about Lucy. Lucy thought of Julie and said he had also come to help. Why did he only mention Jenny? The bandits saw that the defenders now had 2 mages. They panicked and started to run away. The name Makos was heard several times among the cries. Craig came over. He said he was worried about Julie when he ran away, and was glad everything was okay. In return, Julie asked Craig to take care of Marie. Lucy is so surprised by Julie's behavior that he runs to save the girl. Marie clung to Julie's sleeve and roared, and didn't want to go to Uncle Craig because he was scary. Julie calmed her down and promised to come back. But Marie roared that Mom and Dad said the same thing as Gully's brother, but didn't return. But Gully gently stroked her head and said he was giving her his word. Brother is a magician and magicians don't lie. They will avenge Marie. He left Marie with Craig and went to help the others. Craig told him to take the right side. Lucy approached Gilly and asked if he was going to be the first to fight again. Gilly excitedly asked her to go together. While McCann and Leo were ferociously smashing the enemies, the bandits were nervous, but they hadn't retreated because they were outnumbered. When the fireball burst into the bandit ranks, it knocked out many people and caused panic among the bandits. It helped Gowly and Lucy join Makong. Gowly thought, based on the number of enemies, that all the followers of Black Mages had gathered here. But McCann contradicted him, because while there were fighters here, the mages mattered most. There were no Black Mages here yet. And then someone cast a diamond dust spell on the bandits. The Black Magician emerged from the darkness. He said that stupid bandits are useless. He asked Makon and Gao Li if they were looking for him. Gao Li compared the Black Magician to a substance that pops up by itself, and asked if he was the Black Magician. He said he was going to send Rufus to the next world, and introduced himself. His name was Rufus, and he was the second apprentice of the Black Magician Makos. His speech failed to impress, and Rufus sent an ice spear spell at his opponent, but it was met with a magic cannon spell. There was a massive explosion. Then Gao Li assigned roles. He would take the magician and the others would deal with the bandits. He suggested that Rufus called the teacher immediately, as Rufus was not a worthy opponent. After that greeting, Rufus looked so furious that Gowly thought it would be strange to get a smack. After saying that, a magical battle began. Jael Li responded to Rufus's ice storm with a firewall spell. The 2 elements met violently. Each of the mages held up a powerful wall of his spell, behind a wall of his spell. And Rufus didn't expect to meet worthy resistance from such a young age and started to get nervous. He wondered if his opponent was also a black mage. But Julie's opponent told him that he was just really tough, though he was expecting a stronger opponent. Rufus yelled that he couldn't lose. Julie replied that he had worked hard to collect mana and learn magic, but Rufus had taken the easy path of black magic, and he enjoys watching Rufus get angry. And what's the point of practicing black magic when he can't beat a mere wizard? A furious Rufus sent an ice bomb spell at him, but Gully easily fought off his spell. He added that Rufus must have contracted with some nice demon, if that was all he could do. And Rufus was getting angrier and angrier. He was cursing and threatening to take Julie's life right now, so he ordered the bandits to attack him. He told Rufus that trying to win a number is low when you can't do it with your powers, and reminded him that Rufus had forgotten something. Lucy appeared behind Rufus in a leap, and the bandits were hit with magic arrows. The black magician's apprentice was left alone with an enraged Lucy. Rufus put up a barrier, but Lucy screamed her father's name and her blade burst into flames. Rufus realized Lucy's sword was magical, and put up a powerful ice shield. The fire blade easily shattered the ice shield, and Lucy struck Rufus with the blade. The bandits with him saw him leave the light and run away, and Lucy saw that Gua Li wasn't feeling well, and she realized that he had used up too much magic energy. Today the mage's path is like a labyrinth. As the level increases, the amount of mana decreases, and its replenishment becomes more difficult. How much effort will it take to overcome difficulties in the future? Some take the hard way and those who take the easy way, but the most important thing is to know how to use that power. Gao Li thought while Lucy helped him walk. He wasn't feeling very well, but there was no time to rest. After all, the black magician had also sent his disciple to meet Gao Li, and took the easy way out. Meanwhile, the black magician was taunting the village defenders. Jenny shot at him with her bow, but the arrows didn't take the black mage, because he had a defense against regular attacks. He stood and scathed under the mercenaries' attacks and taunted them. The mercenaries could only grit their teeth after verbally abusing Jenny and Luca. The black magician sent fireballs at them. Luca was desperate, but he covered himself with a magic shield, and the fireballs didn't hurt Jenny and Luca. The black mage sent fireballs almost continuously. Luca's strength melted and he could barely hold the magic shield. Suddenly, before another fireball, the mercenaries were protected by an ice shield. Gua Li and Lucy came up when they connected with Luki and Jenny. Gua Li asked who the mage was. It was Gloin, a level 5 mage. But Gao Li said he was a level 5 mage too. Luke couldn't believe it. Black magician Glow and saw Lucy and recognized her sword as magic. They told her to give him the sword. Then Lucy clarified what would happen if she did not want to give him the sword, and the magician replied that he would send her to the other world and take the sword himself. Gloin has been asked if he is a Mako's henchman like Rufus. He replied that he was the first apprentice of the black magician. Mako's he asked where Rufus was. He was informed that he had already left this world. That made Gloin happy. He thought he was the only one left in the strongest, but he felt it was necessary to avenge Rufus, so he cast a flamethrower spell on them. He wanted to strike Lucy. She stopped Ghoulie and rushed into battle with her flaming sword. When he saw that the flamethrower spell did not affect Lucy, running at him, he cast fire barrier. But Lucy shattered the fire barrier with her flaming sword, and ended up near glowing. Gil Li was amazed by the power of the magic sword created by Lair. Lucy, who inherited the dragon blood, was powerful. The magic glowing used smelled of elf blood, and Lucy could smell it. She asked Goen how many elves he had sacrificed. He said that he didn't understand why it bothered her so much. After all, she's only half-elf. Gilly answered that Goen is a half-blood mage, as he can only use one type of magic. While Guile was arguing with Gloin, the black magician watched them from hiding. He was thinking about how he had never seen this magician before. Over and over again Lucy tried to attack Glowing, but he'd close in with a wall of fire. Throw fireballs at her, he used hellfire. Lucy couldn't get through this barrier to the black magician. Gil Li advised her to take her time. Soon the magic of Glowing would be over. He has powerful magic, but at a safe distance. It's harmless and he only uses one kind of magic. His mana is running out, and when he's tired, then you can attack. That's what Lucy Gully explained, and he advised Glowin to use his flicker magic when he's exhausted. Loki was indignant. He didn't understand why Gully had given the clue to the enemy. Then Gully shared his observations with Loki. He suspected that Glowin didn't know how to use shimmer magic, because once they gained power the easy way, they immediately mastered powerful spells, ignoring less powerful magic. Loki said that mages who came from nowhere and mastered magic the easy way, instead of studying hard, should be burned. Gao Li had the thought that Loki was alluding to him, to surprise in her teaching methods. Gloin ran out of energy, he could no longer maintain the spell, and the flames around him went out, and Lucy, with the battle cry of "Let's go!" rushed into action. Gloin screamed in fear. Suddenly Lucy was thrown backward by a slashing gust of wind, and the old black magician came out of hiding. He was walking and telling Glowin that he was overconfident. Luki immediately recognized him. It was the same black mage named Makos he had seen. He kept saying he thought Rufus and he could handle it. He fell to his knees, apologized to his teacher, and told him that Rufus seemed to have left the world. He pointed to Gilly to tell exactly who had sent him to Rufus's grave. Mako suggested that Gilly might be a witchfinder, and asked why he was fighting on the other side. Gale Lee was unfamiliar with the definition of witch doctor, and asked what it meant. Luki explained that black magicians called each other, that Gale Lee had already asked Makos why they were attacking ordinary people, but he wouldn't answer the question, and said he was asking unnecessary questions. He cast the arcane energy spell. A shaft of unknown energy rolled toward Gale Lee and his friends. To protect himself, he put up a force wall shield. He could barely keep up the pressure. It was so strong that Gale Lee's feet gradually sank into the ground. Geo Lee screamed. Fiery magical energy raged in the streets of the ruined village. Geo Lee's friends were worried about him, but suddenly it was over. Mako stopped maintaining the flow of arcane energy. The raging flames subsided and Geo Lee breathed out a sigh of relief. The confrontation had not been easy for him. His strength was exhausted and his feet plowed a furrow. The release of energy was compelling and contained. The energy of another world. Mako's was also surprised that such a young wizard could block his magic. At that moment Mako's is attacked by Leo. He shouted that he would avenge his comrades. Mako's snapped his fingers and sent magical arrows at Leo. Without looking back to distract Leo, Guile attacked with the fire horn spell. He responded with ice cone. Their magic met and mutually destroyed each other by digging a deep ditch. There was a stalemate. Each side realized it had a strong opponent, and Mako's couldn't figure out where his opponent was trained. He had a special technique and was unclear what to expect from him. Sitting in the ditch dug by the clash of their magics, Gilly thought, it didn't matter if someone was a tower mage or self-taught. It isn't very sensible. They were exchanging remarks. Luki stepped into their conversation and asked Mako's if he was surrendering. Gilly asked Luki not to interfere with their conversation, and Mako's said he thinks tower mages are idiots who don't improve their skills from generation to generation. Mako's had once studied in the Tower of the Sages, and even entered the inner circle. But when asked why he became a black magician, he said he was tired of being degraded. He believed his skill knew no bounds, but he had been training in the tower for over 10 years, and couldn't progress. All mages, even those much weaker than him, have reached great heights, but not him. Julie told him that if you lack talent, you will not succeed even if you work hard. He went on to say that there were persistent students who, in their endeavor, even left this world trying to finish their studies, and other students graduated without lifting a finger. A magician named Mako's became disillusioned and left the tower to become a black magician. Julie gave him an example. He believed that effort is not equal to results in this world, so he studied hard to get into a good university. However, the students who had talent in their studies were always ahead of him, without putting in as much effort as Gil. Lee and the black magician continued. He said that he could not overcome the 4th grade of the inner circle, no matter how much effort he put into it. He disagreed with the objections, because he had become a powerful magician, and wanted to send his rival to the other side. At that moment Gua Li didn't know what to do. There was no way to change Mako's mind. He was too strong after all. Gua Li is just an ordinary high school student. I had to devise a solution that would change the situation. Macos was ready to send Gilly to the grave. He was almost desperate. Macos is a level 6 mage. If they attacked simultaneously, Gilly's mana would run out faster. He didn't know how to turn the situation to his advantage. Macos attacked with a secret energy burst. It was a potent attack. Gil Li was swept away. He held on with all his might, and realized he couldn't hold on much longer. But then small hands pressed into his back, helping and supporting him. It was Lucy. She encouraged him and told him not to give up. Loki was helping too. Megan offered to put his strength behind helping him. He put up a force wall in addition to Loki's existing shield, and they were all holding back the pressure of Mako's arcane energy surge. Jenny and Leo were with them. They said they should fight together because they couldn't do it alone. Gao Li was happy with his friend's help, but he had a decision to make. He realized that everything was right, and he had to gather his strength. And Gilly told his friends to attack Mako's when his magic ran out. They should all do it at the same time. Gilly felt that Mako's magic was running out, so he ordered the mercenaries and Lucy to attack. Mako's lightning strike spell struck Lucy. She dropped her sword in pain. The black mage sent a fire spear spell at Leo and Megan. Then Jenny sent him an arrow and scratched him in the face. How dare she? Michaels raged. Loki stood next to Jenny and cast a spell sending ice arrows at Mako's. Mako's responded with powerful fire arrows, and here I am. Lucy got to Mako's, but he turned the ground under Lucy's feet into slime, and Lucy slipped and fell. and Mako's wished Lucy away and sent a slashing gust of wind at her. But Mako's spell was interrupted by a huge verdigris Maken, towering over him with a deafening growl. With an air hammer spell Mako's threw Maken off of him. He thought his team of friends were pathetic brats, and thought they couldn't beat him. He said Gully's skills were too weak, so he used physical force. He replied that he had hired a bunch of fighters himself. The comrades helped Gao Li buy some time, and gradually replenished his mana, and Gao Li also joined the fight. He summoned the Wind Gust spell. The Black Mage tauntingly told Gao Li that he was exerting himself so hard, but only using third-level magic, and that it was already time to finish off Gao Li. I got the answer that the main thing is not a magician's level, but his ability to use magic correctly in different situations. And with a cry of behold, the true magician directed fire magic away from Mako's. He didn't understand why the attack was going that way, but in the attacked area a fire tornado swirled and rose up. This result of the interaction of the two spells surprised Luca, as well that wind gusts and fire gusts, combined to create a level 6 fire tornado, was a revelation to Mako's. The help of Guile's friends didn't go to waste. Mako's became inattentive and missed the creation of the tornado. The fire tornado was closing in on Mako's, and behind him his apprentice was calling out to him. Mako's created a massive, mighty ice wall in front of him to protect him from the fire tornado. Meanwhile, a desperately cursing Lucy ran out to Julie. She dragged Leo Yimikin behind her. He hit them with his spells. Fire tornado and ice wall met. The ice wall collapsed as shards flew around. Amid the collision stood the sorceress Mugos. The elements raged for a while and sparks and ice shards flew. Then the fire died down. Luki and Gilly hoped that Mako's was finished. But a furious Mako's came out of the smoke. He was saying that his opponent was a punk, and now he's gonna get his ass kicked. It wasn't the first time he'd said he'd definitely punish his opponent, but now he was really angry. And Marco started casting arcane energy release. The spell didn't work, and the Black Mage didn't understand what was wrong. You only created a very ordinary fireball to hit Mako's. That surprised Luca. He didn't understand how to use an ordinary fireball on such a strong opponent, but was assured that this not-so-powerful magic would end the fight. And the fireball rushed toward the enemy. Gilly's assurances did not calm Luki down, and he continued to resent them. The potential of a fireball and a level 6 mage were not comparable. Mako's was also surprised, but he suddenly realized that something was wrong with his throat, and that he couldn't cast a counter spell. He couldn't understand what was happening to him, and couldn't put up a defense. The fireball hit the target and Glowin ran to the teacher's aid. Gilly's plan worked and he was happy. However, Luki still didn't understand what had happened to Mako's. While Glowin was huddled around Mako's, he got up with the help of his apprentice. The Black Magicians walked away towards Gao Li. He said that he would never forget what had happened today. Lucy rushed after the Black Magicians, but she was stopped by Gao Li. It was dangerous for even Lucy to attack the two Black Mages alone, and her strength and mana were already gone. Unfortunately, the Black Magicians had to be let go. Supporting the teacher, Glowin led him away. Why the Mako's couldn't deflect the fireball, Luke couldn't figure it out. Then Gilly explained that carbon monoxide poisoning comes from incomplete combustion. It's difficult to understand. The Mona-generated fire caused incomplete combustion. He made the fire tornado with that in mind. Even though the wind was artificial fire, it was real, so the gas generated together would be absorbed by the tornado. Mako's decision to block the tornado with the ice wall was a mistake. Mako's could have cleared the air with magic if he had noticed the gas. He wasn't vigilant, so he decided to stop the tornado with an ice wall. In carbon monoxide poisoning, the body experiences oxygen deprivation, headaches and dizziness occur, and concentration is impaired. After all the explanations, Lucy and Luki sadly said they didn't understand anything. Gail Lee felt that kids in this world were stupid. The sun rose over the forest. The group of friends stood silently looking at the rising sun. Then Lucy asked, "We won?" And she answered with a deafening shout that we had indeed won. Clamping his ears from Lucy's scream, Gully thought Mako's would suffer from carbon monoxide poisoning for a long time, and now all the Black Magicians would turn against them. He remembered Mako's hateful look. Mako's would surely try to send Julie to the next world. He was sure that he and Mako's would meet again, but in any case Julie was alive today. Outside the village, Mako's was angry. He promised to spare no one and send everyone to the other world. He vowed to take revenge on Julie. First, he told Goen to inform all the black magicians that Gilly and all his friends are declared sworn enemies of the black magicians. This time they were on the verge of going to the afterlife, but in a way they were just lucky. Julie analyzed it. They thought Mako's was going to the afterlife, but he was stronger than they thought. He discussed the power of the black magicians with McCann, but Gilly believed that not all black magicians were so strong. His disciples had poor control over their abilities. If Gilly had fought Mako's individually, he might have died. Gilly thanked Lucy. He looked at Lucy and thought that if you looked at her closely, Lucy was pretty cute and her ears wanted to be touched. But Lucy didn't like this kind of attention from Julie. While Jenny was talking to Lucky, she said that by accompanying him, she was taking unnecessary risks that were not stipulated in the contract. And Jenny made it clear that she's a mercenary after all, so she'd have to pay extra for the risk. Then she approached Gil Lee and praised him for defeating the black magician, saying he was stronger than she expected. He replied that he'd been lucky and wasn't sure he'd win the next time they met. Jenny stroked his head. He said that luck is very important, especially for mercenaries. He saved everyone and she thanked him. He said they had all fought together and the credit was shared, and he was embarrassed because he liked Jenny as a girl. He thought Jenny was more in line with his ideal than little Lucy. Craig approached them and asked how they were feeling. He too was glad they had survived the night attack. Gil Lee said that McCann was injured, with a broken rib, and Leo had broken stitches. He asked where Alicia was. Jenny came up to him and asked him to help her with something. He was pleased and agreed. But Lucy stepped in between him and Jenny with an offer of help. She said she'd help Jenny herself. And leaving with Jenny, Lucy casually told him to grab the magic wand. And there on the ground was Micah's forgotten staff. Julie realized that Mako's was even more trouble than he had thought. Holding Mako's staff in his hands, Gao Li thought the staff was like his own. But to use it, it had to be shortened with mana. Gao Li asked Luki if he wanted to take Mako's staff as a trophy, and Luki gratefully accepted. Even though they won the battle, the village was badly damaged. Gao Li looked around. There were many burnt houses and people who had left this world. They came to the door of the infirmary and called for Alicia, but no sound came from behind the door. No one answered them. It was very quiet. When they opened the door, they saw that bandits had captured Alicia and Marie. Alicia had a knife at her throat and stood still. Marie was crying. The bandit leader promised they would be sorry if they fought the black magicians. Everyone was tired after the battle and didn't want to fight. Gilly didn't understand the bandit leader. He had already taken a beating from them. What's he doing again? The bandit leader explained that he didn't feel well last time. He admits that Gil Lee is a strong opponent, but is no match for the black magicians. I had to check with the bandits to find out which black wizards. He was no match for the ones he'd already defeated. And the bandit continued. He threatened to send Gully's girlfriend to the grave if she ran away. Everyone looked at Gully in surprise. He asked if Alicia was his girlfriend. Alicia was embarrassed and denied it. The bandit started talking and decided that his girlfriend was a red-headed little elf. The leader interrupted these conversations. He said the other wars should be coming soon, and they should be outside by now. Everyone listened. There was silence all around. The leader began to get nervous about why it was quiet and where the expected fighters were. Marie clamped her teeth into the hand of the bandit who was holding her. The thug let go of her in surprise and Marie ran away. At that exact moment, Alicia blocked the hand holding the knife at her throat and simultaneously broke the ringleader's nose with a sharp, backward motion of her head. Then he twisted the ringleader's arm with a practiced motion and held him securely in a painful grip. She put the ringleader on the floor with a practiced move and fixed him firmly in place. The stunned leader of the bandits had no time to realize that their roles had been reversed. While casting binding ropes on the bandits, Julio remembered that despite her harmless appearance, Alicia was a mercenary. The binding ropes firmly secured the bandits. They couldn't move. A crying Marie ran up to Julio and hugged him tightly. Julio stroked her head. He was a little late, but everything will be fine now. A furious Lucy stood over the bandit leader. She hated being called a little elf, and now she was going to bring that truth to the bandit leader. Along with Marie, Guel Li marveled at how deftly Alicia had dealt with the bandit. She explained that she could not resist As long as the child was held hostage, she was told that they had defeated the black magicians. It made Alicia and Marie very happy. They excitedly started hugging Julie. Marie shouted that she had the best little brother. Such emotionality was uncharacteristic of Alicia, and she embarrassedly pulled away and apologized. But Julie reassured her that everything was fine. Marie, on the other hand, tearfully thanked him for avenging Marie's parents. He had promised and he had avenged them. He called Lucy, who was still tirelessly educating the bandit leader. He advised her to finish her upbringing. Looking at Lucy, Gully thought he had survived. But if he doesn't want to be on the verge of going to the afterlife, he should be careful with Lucy. I told Alicia that Megan and Leo were hurt, and she ordered them inside. While Alicia was treating Macon, Julie and Lucy sat beside each other. They were worried about Macon. He was hurt badly, he had a broken rib. But Alicia fixed him when Alicia was treating Leo. She reprimanded him and warned him to be careful. But when he saw the black wizard, he lost control. The injured residents were numerous. Alicia sorted the wounded by severity. She was going to treat the most seriously injured first. She had help from the locals. They helped those who could be helped without magic. They prepared hot water and towels. There was a long line of civilians who needed help. Looking at the victims, Leo said Mako's got off easy. Leo should have taken him down personally. Looking at this, Luke asked Gilly what they would do now. He didn't know what to do and didn't understand why. Luke asked him, if the Black Magi didn't come here originally for the stone mines, mercenaries should still guard the mines. Mako's may be there too, but Mako's is probably not there. He's badly wounded and he's lost his staff. No matter how vital the mines are to him, he probably won't go there. The question is whether there are any black magicians left. But Luki checked with the captured bandits about the mages, and they said there were only 3 black magicians. He looked at the long line of injured civilians. He decided there was no way out. A trip to the mines shouldn't be delayed. We need to get on the road right now. The bandit leader was showing us the way to the mines. Lucy was following him. We went to the mines in a small group. Lucy and Luki were in the lead, followed by Leo and Macon. At the end were Gil Lee and Jenny. Gil Lee's journey was arduous. He was exhausted. He hadn't slept the previous night and had an exhausting night battle. And now he had to walk uphill. He walked and thought that to save Marie, he had to send the bandits to the afterlife. He was desperate when he could go home. He thought about how he was just a normal high school kid, and now a magician who sent people to the other side of the world. If his mom found out, she'd harakiri him. He caught up with Macon and asked how he was feeling. Alicia had cured Macon, but he needed rest too. Macon in turn took care of Gully. Macon was an adult-trained mercenary, and Julie was already sweating profusely. It was obvious that he was exhausted. Jenny offered to help him. She offered to lean on her. He asked Jenny if it would be hard for her if he leaned on her. She said it would be a little hard, but would get there. Luki heard the conversation. He asked Lucy if she was tired and marveled at her incredible fitness, but Lucy told him she would accelerate sharply. Luki and Gully were already walking with their last strength. Finally, the mercenary leader reported that they were close to the mines. They stopped. Nothing could be seen behind the trees. Gully decided to use magic. With a vision spell, he saw armed men and the buildings behind them. Suddenly, the bandits' leader ran away, shouting to warn his own. He shouted that he was here and had been captured by the villagers. Guile Lee was completely surprised. He didn't suspect that the bandit leader had such artistic ability. And now the leader stands at the head of the bandits and proudly announces that they are in Black Brotherhood territory and are definitely in. And Julie and Lucy thought this weirdo had learned nothing from life. Lucy said it looked like he needed another beating. The bandits talked about how this boy was the mage who had defeated the black mages in one fell swoop. And then Guile himself added to the bandits' fears by promising to defeat them. To the bandits, leader was proudly proclaiming that they were not afraid of threats. When he noticed that his subordinates were dropping their weapons and preparing to surrender, the leader tried to persuade the bandits to fight, but they refused. They said they were no match for a mage who had killed 3 black mages in one fell swoop. In the eyes of the bandits, a mage who single-handedly defeated 3 black magicians was so tough that they surrendered without a fight. The high praise shocked Gowli. Could you help me? The scream of a reared bandit leader flew through the forest. It was Lucy telling him what not to do. The bandits were overwhelmed and frightened. Makan approached them and made them an offer. He would hire them to work for him. The bandits thought about it. To free the captured villagers, it was decided to inspect chats. Megan and Lucy will inspect them outside, while they watch over the captured bandits. We went into the darkness of the mine in a small group. There were many glowing crystals in the mine, Leo said, in shock that he had never seen a mine with large mana crystals. They found wooden crates filled with bags of gold, coins and jewelry apparently. The black magicians were planning to escape, and had gathered their treasure in one place. Leo wondered how much gold they could earn. At one point Luki went to the wall and easily enough unscrewed a piece of rock with large crystals embedded in it. These are mana crystals, he said. This mine was comparable in size to the Kalant mine, the largest on the continent. It was amazing to calculate how much money the black magicians made. At a guess, they mined about 500 kilograms of mana crystals here. That means they could have earned over 1 million gold. It was unclear if anyone had that much gold, and why they needed so much mana in the capital. A luxurious mansion cost 10,000 gold. If the compensation for the mercenary's death was 30 gold pieces, how much can one earn in mana? Impressed by Gil Li in such mines. The work is challenging and requires a considerable workforce, so the black magicians kidnapped people and forced them to work in the mines. They illegally extracted a considerable amount of mana crystals. After considering it, Leo concluded that the black wizards had bad intentions. All the kingdoms could be in danger. This situation is going to be a new adventure, thought Gilly when they emerged from the mine. They discussed the new facts with Megan and Lucy. They concluded that it was much more complicated than they had previously thought. We had to escort the freedmen back to the village, and their McCann said to tell the Lord about the mine. McCann looked at Leo and asked if he could do the job. He wondered if he was the one McCann was talking about. He explained that he had met many mercenaries, and they were not all good manners. But Leo was too well-mannered compared to the other mercenaries, so he assumed Leo was a knight. Mekon continued to reason that the comrades Leo had lost in the battle with the black mages were probably guarding him. This is why Leo is eager to avenge his comrades. It was McCann who reasoned next. This reasoning made Guali realize why Leo acted like this. Guali thought he was too aggressive and had a reason to be. It looks like Leo was trying to hide who he was, but he should have done a better job of keeping McCann from suspecting him. But Leo expected a seasoned mercenary like McCann to have difficulty hiding his identity. A mine like this is a critical government facility, and there is a reward for finding such a place. To receive the award, you must meet with the Lord in person. The process will take about 2 months. And you must come to the capital to collect the award. The lengthy procedure to get a reward for discovering a mine disappointed Gilly. Then Mackin offered to take the reward and give it to the villagers. Since the village had been seriously damaged and winter was coming, it would be hard for the villagers. Leo supported this idea. He promised the knight that he would donate the reward he received to benefit the residents. They decided to return to the village. Gao Li felt completely tired, so he had to go out again. On behalf of the villagers, Craig thanked them warmly for all they had done, although Gao Li was still worried that the black magicians might come back. Here again Leo reassured him that he would try to inform the Lord as soon as possible. The villagers had prepared food and a clean bed for the boys. They guessed that their defenders would be exhausted and hungry. A richly laid table awaited them in the house. Lucy was very hungry and ate with a great appetite. While eating, Gulia asked Luca how he learned to calculate so quickly. In the mind, he did the math in a couple of minutes. He dismissed it. The calculations were easy to understand, and he wondered how Gao Li had reached the 5th level. It took Luki several years to reach level 4, and there was no more progress. Luki was stumped and didn't know what to do before. He thought he could easily learn magic. He asked if Gale Li had any secrets to get to the next level. Gale Li was annoyed by the ending of that sentence. It seemed like Luki started to say good things, but then the sentence's meaning became offensive. He wanted to punch Luca hard and scream, "What the hell are secrets? It's just hard work. How dare he ask for easy ways? He's a magician." But he didn't and thought he'd make a great actor. This means you must work hard to overcome several grades at a time. And reach the 5th grade. I couldn't believe Luki. He then asked Yahello if he could call him his brother. He was surprised but allowed it as an exception. As a brother, Luca asks Yahello about his relationship with Lucy. He didn't expect such an answer and was confused, but he made a joke and said he was thinking of getting married. This horrified Luca with a laugh. Giulio admitted that he was joking and calmed down the frightened Luca. Jenny approached them and asked where they were going to go next, since the village was already in order. He told her that they were going towards Krangas, and Luca had to go to the Academy of Light and tell them what happened. Since Jenny had been assigned to protect the baby, she would go with him. This information upset Julie, since it was more fun together. Luca's teacher had reached the 5th level at the age of 20. Impressed by Guoli and the teacher's success, Luca was also going to reach the 5th level. Guoli himself thought the story made him think that this world is big, and many people are strong in it. He needs to become stronger in order to protect people. He may meet other black magicians in the future. Therefore, he must find the dragon heart and reach the 6th level as soon as possible. Craig thanked Macon profusely. When he said goodbye, Macon replied that Craig had also helped him many times on the battlefield. Alicia also gave Leo final instructions on how to care for his wound. Leo was grateful to her and said he would never forget Alicia. They knelt in front of her and kissed her hand. He uttered the ritual phrase, "May your path be full of blessed light." An embarrassed Alicia thanked Leo and blessed him in turn. After that, Leo jumped on his horse and rode off to inform the Lord about the mine with mana stones he had discovered. Everyone waved at Leo. Lucky and Jenny were also leaving. In parting, Lucky expressed his gratitude to everyone, and Gully was jealous that Lucky was riding with Jenny on the same horse and holding her by the waist. Meanwhile, Lucky waved to Lucy and said that they would meet. Lucy also waved her hand to Luca and wished him a happy journey, which pleased him. Jenny winked at Gali and told him to see you later. Kid, he was pleased about it. Little Marie was crying to say goodbye to her brother. She begged him not to leave. To come back, he promised Marie he'd be back. Lucy told him to keep his promises to himself. It was just a matter of time. He would tell Marie to obey the adults until he came, and not to be sick. Marie sadly agreed. Craig reassured him that Marie would be in his care and would be fine. Already, Macon was hurrying to get into the carriage and get on the road. The last farewell words were said, and everyone sat down in their seats and set off. Little Marie stood next to Craig, waving goodbye and shouting, "Thank you, brother, and see you later." While sitting in the wagon, Julie thought it was sad to part with someone. It was more fun together, and he already missed Jenny. He noticed that Alicia was thinking about something, so he asked her what she was thinking about. She said she was worried about the black magicians. They had always been the enemy in any continent. After constant pressure, they hid deeper into the darkness. The black magicians became more organized to protect themselves. Alicia asked Guli if he had heard of the Holy Struggle. That happened 100 years ago. Jao Li hadn't heard of the Holy Struggle. He was also a little annoyed by Lucy snoring next to him. He scratched the back of his head in embarrassment. Alicia was amazed. She hadn't expected he might be hearing about this. For the first time, he excused himself that he and his teacher only practiced training and magic. But Alicia still couldn't understand such a lapse in training. And he knows the history of the human world perfectly. Julie thought Alicia began to tell. 100 years ago, all the continents, nations were in chaos during the battles. Many innocent people left this world. Those were terrible times. To survive, many were looking for a way to increase their power. So some of the ordinary mages started practicing black magic. There were more and more black magicians. The king of a small country, Nicholas I, was hungry for power, so he supported the witch finders. Thus the Empire of Plain was born. This information got me thinking. Such an alliance was surely not a lasting one. He shared his thoughts with Ilithia. She confirmed it after uniting the lands. Nicholas I wanted to eliminate the black magicians. He began to fear their growing power. Ragdam, the leader and mentor of the sorcerers, guessed Nicholas's plans and decided to strike first. He set up 3 magic circles around the state. To activate the magic, hundreds of thousands of souls of the kingdom's inhabitants were required. Many black magicians spent even the mana they needed to live. They turned to ash, so the black magicians could open the Devil's Dimension Gate, which is also called the Gates of Hell. various demons and monsters began to emerge, beginning the holy struggle. The story impressed Guoli, who realized that these were serious events. He was thinking one must have tremendous power to open the gate from the demon world to this place. Black Mage Ragdom's skills were no joke. Whether the holy struggle was a battle between demons and humans only, he decided to check with Alicia. She explained it wasn't simple. All the races united to defeat the Dark Empire. It took 7 years to defeat their enemies. In any case, it was a terrible struggle. During it, the world gave 5 heroes, and the Kingdom of Plain was completely destroyed. Alicia also listed the names of the heroes of the holy struggle. 4. Jill Lee, the brilliant magician. Lionel, the quick and agile elf trinity. The mercenary King Tony, the high cleric of the Holy Church. Emily and the Knight of Light Shusta. These 5 heroes were all completely different, but by fighting hand in hand, they defeated the enemy. The Knight of Light Shusta ended the 7-year struggle by sending Ragdam to the other world. To this day, songs and legends are written about this event. It was interesting and informative to hear this story. Gao Li was interested in what was happening to these characters. Now looking at the sleeping Lucy, Alicia yawned. The 5 heroes are influential people to this day. Shusta got a lot of support and became the ruler of Elwyn. Lionel became the head of Chris's Tower and created the Tower of Sages and the Academy of Magic. Gilly clarified Chris's Tower. Yes, this is Lionel's teacher's tower. Gil Lee remembered the golden dragon he saw when he first came to this world. So he's Lionel's teacher if you think about it. There's a fragment of the dragon's heart in Elwyn, and Lair said he was a knight of that state 150 years ago. He got a high rank by doing a lot of work. He also said that the fragment of the dragon heart was in the Black Stream sword 50 years after the end of the holy struggle. Shusta became the ruler of Eloan. Julie pondered. He checked with Ilisai to see if she knew what sword Shusta used. She was thinking Shusta used a sword inherited from her mother. It was called the Black Stream. That's precisely what Gilly guessed. He asked Alicia what kind of family Shu Estier's mother was from. However, there was no reliable information about Shu Estier's origins, and there were many rumors about him, including some bad ones. If Shu Estier's mother is from the Darfan family, then Shu Estier and Lair are related. Gilly continued to ponder. Lucy woke up. She yawned sleepily, and asked if it was just her imagination, or if they were talking about her mom. They didn't quite understand her. As Lucy continued to yawn, she clarified that they were talking and mentioned Trinity. She's Lucy's mom. Julie was surprised. He asked Lucy if one of the holy wrestling heroes was Lucy's mom. She reiterated that Trinity was indeed her mom, even though Trinity was an archer. Lucy's talent for bows was lacking. It is evident to Gilly. He noticed that Lucy immediately swung her fists after the end of the sacred struggle. Trinity retreated to the elven forest and cut all ties. Alicia was thrilled to learn that she was traveling with Trinity's daughter, and Gilly thought that if Alicia found out that Lucy was the dragon's daughter, Conradius would destroy her. Alicia was very worried about what had happened. She hoped that the story of the black magicians would not happen again, and Julie didn't even want to meet them. Alicia continued her story, adding that black mages are always secretive and stand aside. The demons they summoned wreaked havoc on the continent during the holy struggle, and the black mages I stood by all this time. They don't summon demons now because they can't, for whatever reason. Alicia explained to the boys, and Gil Lee remembered Lair's explanation. The dimension gate had a capacity limit and would not accept mana. If it exceeded the limit, like Lair's dragon can't go through the gate. It has a lot of mana, and if it exceeds the limit, the gate can explode. According to Alicia, the black magicians likely can't summon demons. Because of a past defeat, they even had a song about it. When darkness descends from the heavens, a black gate opens in the earth. In it will come a true ruler. He will save us all and rule. It's always best to fix minor problems before they become big ones. Alicia thought Gilly understood that. Alicia was worried that the black magicians wanted to summon demons. Again, she wondered if the Munstones were not for sale, but for use in opening the gate. Yul Li's mind was filled with various thoughts. He thought that everything would be fine, that opening the Hell Gate was a Herculean task, and that summoning demons was difficult. He thought, what the hell are demons? His job is to get back to Earth. Just send me home already. Mackin taught Julie how to ride on the road. It was tiring. The speed was too high and my back hurt afterward. Lucy, for her part, was doing acrobatics on her horse. And at the same time she was teasing Julie. But if he kept practicing, he'd learn fast. He was getting good at it. Mikan praised him while saddling the horse. Gao Li clarified where they had come to. It was the trading city of La Rochelle, the largest city in the Caudron Kingdom. Looking at the city's panorama from afar, Gao Li marveled at its size and beauty. The city of La Rochelle has a lot of mercenaries, in addition to a lot of merchants. Merchants constantly move goods in and out, so they hire mercenaries to guard them. This kingdom has the largest mercenary guild in the world. Macon had an old friend in this town who ran an inn. That's where they were going to stay. My friend's name was Sherman. He greeted Macon cheerfully. They shook hands. They gave Alicia and the boys a friendly greeting. There were a few visitors in the inn. The travelers were given rooms and a bath and invited to rest. Lucy was the first to rush into the room with a shout of joy. How nice it was to be bathed in hot water. Gao Li also enjoyed the comfort. By the time he got down to the mess hall, the whole team was eating around the table. Macon said they were discussing tomorrow's business. If we leave early tomorrow, they could have arrived by tonight. Macon asked how far away the thing Julie was looking for was. To check, Julie took out the device that Lair had given him. The device showed that the Dragonheart shard was close to him. He asked Macon what was above this town. There was the fairy forest, the mirror lake, and the fairy palace. He was shocked. Julie didn't expect there to be fairies here, but Alicia cooled his emotions. She explained that no one could enter the fairy forest. The fairy forest is in contact with the spirits. Because of space distortion, it's impossible to find it. It was called the spirit barrier. Even if you can get in, it's not easy to get out. It's possible to get in and come back out, but the odds are 1 in a million. After listening to Makan's explanation, Gil Li immediately realized that the Dragon Heart Shard was there, and that he was Gilly the loser. Lucy calmed him down. She told him not to worry because she would be there for him. Alicia reiterated that it was almost impossible to get in and out. Macon tried to talk him out of it too. He thought the teacher would understand if Gilly couldn't get the critical thing he sought. But Gilly replied that he had a reason for finding the object. He couldn't give up. There was silence at the table. Gilly reassured the people present that he and Lucy would go into the forest together. Let them not worry about them, and go to Kranga's. He was surprised by Alicia's reaction. She jumped up from the table and began to resent his words. But Gil Li couldn't jeopardize them for what only he needed. The indignant Alicia couldn't find the words. She snatched the beer from McCann's hands and drank it down. This time the friends couldn't find words. They only looked at her in surprise. She finished her beer, burped loudly, and wiped her mouth with her sleeve. She put her hands to her sides and began to speak. It was the first time they'd ever seen Alicia so flustered. Julie's words angered her, since he didn't understand what exactly caused such a reaction. She was disappointed with him. She firmly said she would go with them, objecting to Julie's protests that it was dangerous. She spoke very firmly and decisively. When they were just about to go there together, she said she thought of him as her comrade. Even though they haven't known each other that long, does he think she can just stay away? If her friend is going to a dangerous place. Mikan backed her up. He, too, thought they couldn't leave the boys alone in such a dangerous endeavor. Then Lucy summarized that they all go to the fairy forest together. It was unexpected for Gul Li. He was touched and grateful, and he felt more at ease about continuing to travel with Makan and Alicia as an experienced traveler. Makan advised me not to rush, but to rest for a day before setting off and look for a guide. There may be one here. Sherman, the innkeeper, knew just who to recommend. His wife, Little Cat, was a talented member of the Thieves' Guild. She said that one of her comrades could return from the fairy forest. Looking at her, Gilly wondered how he hadn't heard her stand behind him. Gilly associated it with a giant bear. It's just as big and moves silently. He asked Little Cat where they could find her mate. She wondered. She assumed the comrade was in town. More precisely, she'd suggested finding out at the Thieves' Guild, and offered to escort them there. It was already late evening, and it surprised Gully that they were going right then. But she smiled. The work of the Thieves' Guild was beginning. The city of La Rochelle did not sleep even at night. Little Cat led the whole company to the Thieves' Guild, which was called the Treasure Hunters' Guild. They were met by a man named Voodoo. He and Little Cat greeted each other, and Little Cat said they were going to see the master. They went to the library there. Little Cat counted out a certain book and took it out. The bookcases slid open and a passage opened. She invited me in, but only 2 people were allowed in and they were unarmed. Jill Lee decided to take Lucy with him. They disarmed and went with Little Cat. Beyond the passage there was a staircase leading down. As they walked, Gully asked Little Pussycat a few questions. She was eager to tell me in the Thieves' Guild. Nicknames were given based on appearance. Looking at Little Cat, Gilly didn't understand how it happened. The clan of thieves was underground. It wasn't secret information and they could see its location. It had many exits but only one entrance. They are connected to the underground waterways. Gilly figured it out to make it easier to escape. They reached a closed door. Little Cat said that the information they were looking for could be inside. They went into the room. Several people were in the room. The main one greeted Little Cat. He knew her well. She said hello too, and called him master, but he was ready for her to call him Camel, like in the good old days. She told him right away what she was there for. She said they were looking for Palm Savita and asked if he knew where she was. The master usually filed information, but Palm Savita's whereabouts were no secret. Out of old friendship he was willing to tell for nothing. Palm Savita was now in the custody of the royal guard. 3 days ago she broke into Gabriel's tower and was caught. She said she was lost but it didn't work with the guards. Little Cat exclaimed that she hadn't changed. The master asked Palm Savita to remind her that she had not paid her guild membership dues in 6 months. He turned to Gil Lee and told him he had important information, worth 30 gold pieces. This surprised Yu Li. If the information was useless, Master was prepared to give him his money back. Little Cat recommended that he listen. Since Gilly trusted Little Cat, he bought the information from Master. 30 gold pieces, he said they were wanted, and they're connected to the Black Wizard organization. They promised an unimaginable reward for their capture, and they were surrounded by armed thieves. They thought Gilly couldn't use magic without the staff, so he prepared to attack with fire magic. He told the thieves he'd easily blow the place to hell if they attacked. Little Pussycat began to quiet the rivals. Master confirmed that he saw that Yuli is strong and doesn't want to be buried here. And now, he told his men not to get involved in such a dangerous business. He doesn't want anyone to leave this world because money blinded him. So Master apologized to Yuli and said he was checking on him and hoped that his information would be helpful to him. The information for Gale Lee was useful. They said goodbye and Master invited them to come back anytime if they needed any more information. He found out where Palm Savita was and almost blew up their guild. It was something to be proud of. They summarized their visit to the guild. To get into the Royal Security Agency, Palm Savita had a talent for making people's lives difficult. Little Cat lamented she didn't want to go there, but led her friends to the right place. At the Royal Security Agency, Little Puss successfully negotiated with Inspector Rudick. He warned them to behave themselves. She easily negotiated with the inspector and Gilly was surprised. Little Cat said that she used to work for the inspector as an informant. Thanks to her information, the inspector could catch a serial killer and was promoted. They went to the prison. Little Cat said that she had promised herself that she would never come back to this place again after leaving the guild. But she's here again because of Palm Savita. And Gio Lee thanked her because without her, they couldn't have gotten here. One of the prisoners called out to Gully, but Little Cat warned Gully not to talk to the local prisoners. Tom Savita, sitting in her cell, met them incredulously. Little Cat came forward. She said there was a case from Gully and his team. They were interested in Palm Savit. They even had a half-elf. Although Palm Savita herself was not a pure blood. To cooperate, Palm Savita agreed only if she was released. Jelly cried out in greed as he paid the bail of 100 gold coins. Even though he had the money he had received from Baron Condom, he was sorry to spend the money. When Palm Savita was released, she scolded the security agency for imprisoning her and promised to return. Palm Savita refused to meet Gale Lee. She was hungry and didn't want to socialize on an empty stomach. They went to the inn to have dinner and talk. Everyone was tired and Gale Lee was angry at Palm Savita's behavior. Palm Savita had a great appetite. She crammed meat down drinking beer. Lucy was sitting across from her, eating an equally greedy dinner. Julie sat between the girls, eating vigorously and thought they were alike. Finally, Palm Savita ate and asked what Julie wanted to talk to her about. He said it was about the magic forest. She was silent momentarily, thanked him and went on her way. Jewel Lee reminded her that she should pay him the 100 gold pieces he had spent as collateral if she left. Palm Civet didn't like it, but Jewel Lee offered to give her the information she needed. Then he would forget about the money. She was willing to give them the information they needed. On those terms they were interested in whether she went into the woods and could get out and where she was going and when. It was she went to the forest about 10 years ago. She had been there 3 times and reached the Fey Palace. That made Julie happy, so she went to the center of the forest. They asked for more details. Palm Savita refused but was reminded of the 100 gold pieces. A lot of people from this town went to that forest. No one ever came back. Palm Savita's father was a mercenary. One day he was hired to find people who couldn't escape the forest. No one had ever been able to find their way back out until now. Palm Savita's father was the first to do it. He said the fairies helped him. After that he left Palm Savita's mother and went to the forest. He regularly went to the forest, bringing back rare herbs and selling them. Palm Savita told them, and he never gave her and Mama any money. But one day he took Palm Savita with him into the forest. She went with her father to that place about 3 times. Palm Savita hated remembering her father. Her mother had waited for him until she left this world. She wondered why they were asking her about Les. It's not like they're going to go there. She thought they were just about to go there. They even thought they were saying. Then Palm Savita bombarded Julie with questions. She didn't understand how someone could voluntarily go to such a place. But Julie explained to her that he needed to find something there. Palm Savita wondered if they were looking for a unicorn horn, but they did not favor poaching, and explained to Palm Savita that it was a magic item. Palm Savita guessed he was a magician. Looking around at their company, Palm Savita listed the boy mage and half-elf, as well as the big guy and the holy maiden. Palm Savita thought it was a strange lineup for a trek into the magic forest, so they needed the help of an experienced person. She reiterated that it was almost impossible to get out. Julie told her she could come back, but Palm Civet refused to go into the damn forest. Their argument was interrupted by Lucy. She said one word, money, and explained that Palm Savita seemed to need money since she was trying to break into the tower. This decision pleased Gully. He took a money bag and asked Palm Savita if she was interested. She said that if you can't get out of the forest, there's no point in money. But Gully told her they hired her to escape the forest. She began to haggle when asked how much she would be paid. She gave the sum of 1,000 gold coins. He thought about it. The last time he had received 2,500 gold pieces. Well, there was no choice and he was ready to pay. While he was thinking, the Palm Civet got excited and thought she'd quoted too much, so she lowered the price first to 700 coins, then to 500. While he was thinking, the price dropped by half. Julie was surprised, and he told Palm Savita that he would pay her 500 gold pieces. She got excited and tried to grab the bag of money right away, but Julie didn't give her the money until after the work was done. She warned me that she'd run away if she saw anything dangerous on the horizon. What happens to them is not her concern. Alicia didn't like the new team member. She considered her ungrateful, and realized that this cat-like thief could not be trusted. If she doesn't fulfill her promise, they'll have to go into the woods themselves. That was their original plan anyway, so there was nothing to lose. The next morning, they packed for the road and bade farewell to the innkeeper, Sherman, and his wife Little Pussycat. His magic circle would be stronger if he could get one piece of the dragon heart, but he hadn't studied the skills for the 6th level. Gully pondered. When he had time to study, he continued to ponder in his world. He was too damn busy studying. Same here. He wanted to enjoy life in this world, but because of the black mages, he couldn't even see the city of La Rochelle properly. Lucy interrupted his thoughts. She noticed that he was in the clouds again. He asked Lucy if she was worried about Les. She didn't share his concern. It's the forest, so why worry? She's a half-elf, Julie guessed. They were waiting for Palm Savita, who was late. They were beginning to think she wouldn't come and were about to leave, but she came. She came because she needed the money badly, so much so that she was willing to move past unpleasant childhood memories. The girls all rode together in the carriage. Palm Savita sat in the carriage opposite Lucy and Alicia. They rode in silence, and Jill Lee sat next to Macong, and they drove off. It took half a day to get to the forest. After a while they reached a fork in the road. Palm Savita said it was for the forest. They should have just gone straight ahead. There have been attempts to destroy the magic forest. People have tried burning and cutting down trees, but all have been unsuccessful. they were already driving through the forest. It was surprising that it looked completely normal. Palm Savita explained that when they went deeper into the forest, it would change. Realizing that he was getting nervous, Gil Li decided to check the location of the Dragon Heart Shard. On the device indicated that the Dragon Heart Shard was very close. It was definitely in the forest. Gradually something changed around them. Makan noticed that the atmosphere around them had changed. They stopped. I noticed the rays of light coming through the trees, and Lucy saw that the mana flow had changed. Palm Savita approached Giali and carelessly tossed him a small box. He opened it. Inside was a compass. And Palm Savita stood up, looked around, and said, "I'm here again." It was time to use the diary. Palm Savita took out an old book. It was a travel book left by her father. She thought for a long time that her father had thrown them away, but later she found the book under her bed. Gil Li looked at the records out of curiosity, but couldn't read anything. Palm Savita explained that it was okay if he couldn't read. Many kids can't read. He justified that he could read, but he couldn't read handwriting. And he added to himself that he was a big boy. He tried to rush Palm Savita, but she slowed him down. I told him to wait. She took out a pouch containing a white glowing powder. She dipped her finger in the powder and licked it off. At that moment, Julie suspected that she was using drugs, but Palm Savita resented it. Turned out to be phase powder. At some point, Julie imagined that the powder he was made from the ground up fake. He was outraged at the cruelty, but Alicia calmed him down. It turns out this powder comes from the wings of fairies. In other words, it's pollen. Gio Li calmed down and asked how this pollen is used. This information was just from looking at the Palm Savita diary. I just tried it now though. She asked Gul Li to shut up and filled the lamp with pollen. The pollen was supposed to point them in the right direction. Maken couldn't understand how it worked. Gua Li assumed that since fairies were magical creatures, their pollen also had magical powers. And Palm Savita appreciated Julie. She couldn't understand whether he was wise or stupid. She realized how wayfinding worked and ordered us to move out. Everyone loaded back into the carriage. They rode through the forest for a long time, and Maken ordered them to take a break when it began to get dark. After the long journey, Gil Li was worried about the horses. Maken reassured him that this breed of horses is from the Flave Mountain area, and is very hardy. Flave is a beautiful place with endless meadows. It's Maken's homeland where he hasn't been since he was 20. When he became a mercenary, he dreamed of retiring and going back to his homeland to build a ranch. So he invited Yahello to visit. He promised to leave him the best horse and Lucy too. Nothing has happened to them in the forest so far. Palm Savita thought something had changed since she'd first been here, but they're still outside the forest. Things may have changed inside the forest too. Suddenly Lucy felt something. She characterized it as triggered. The others didn't understand at first, but little glowing lights flew toward them. They circled around and came very close. Our baby spirits who have not yet grown full-fledged spirits of light. They have come from the forest. Lucy explained to everyone. Maken had been to many places, but this was the first time he'd seen anything like it. It was beautiful. One of the spirits sat in Lucy's palm. Lucy was touched and delighted, and Alicia and Gilly couldn't even touch those little glowing spirits. That's probably because they're ordinary people, they decided. It looks like Lucy is talking to her little light spirit. She asks at something. Gail Lee is surprised that this beam of light can talk. A startled Lucy turned to them and said that no more fairies were living in the fairy forest. This news surprised and angered Goli. He thought that there must be fairies in the fairy forest, but the fairies had disappeared. All the travelers were startled by the news. The little spirits began to fly away, and it was noticeable that they were all flying in the same direction. The little spirit that communicated with Lucy remained. Lucy was thinking of a name for it, since he was a spirit of light. Lucy named him Els. Els started flying around Lucy at high speed. Lucy couldn't tell if he liked the name or not. The elves had the spiritual arts. Guile asked Lucy if she had studied it. He didn't understand why Lucy didn't understand spirit. Mom tried to teach Lucy, but she said Lucy didn't have the ability. Gil Lee thought about what Lucy has an aptitude for. He decided to hit people. He remembered what Sir Pyres had told him. Spirits need energy to materialize, and the basis of that energy is, of course, mana. Magicians store their energy in the magic circle, and can extract it from there. Spirits can only take mana into themselves and cannot extract. Then she taught that If elves or fairies cannot contact spirits in the first place, there is no way to learn. He asked Lucy if she could feel the dragon heart. She said she couldn't feel it yet, and Gul Li ordered everyone to go to bed. We would have to go further inside the forest. Looking up at the night sky, Gale Li thought that if there were no fairies in the forest, where would the dragon heart be? When Jul Li was stretching his body from sleeping on the ground, in the morning palm, Savita asked him if he would pay her the full amount. Then Jul Li gave her half of the money. He promised to give her the other half when they left the forest. Palm Savita thanked him. When Gil Li asked what she was doing with the money, she briefly said, "She's paying off the debts accumulated during her mother's treatment. It was all her father's fault." She added that she didn't even want to think about him, but she had to come here again for the money. Money is the root of all evil. When Palm Savita got in the carriage, she said it would take 3 days to reach Mirror Lake, but that was on foot. He watched Palm Savita enter the wagon, and thought he was asking about something too personal. As they moved further into the forest, they noticed their surroundings changing. Even the color of the trees had changed. Now Gully understood why people couldn't leave the forest from afar. It seemed to him that this place was an optical illusion, which meant they were getting deeper into the forest. Alicia oversaw the surrounding scenery through the window. A bright glow blinded them. When they blinked, they saw that they were on the shore of a lake with clear water. It wasn't Mirror Lake yet. That was a long way off, and this was an ordinary lake. On the shore of the lake we decided to make a break. They were admiring the beautiful lake. Alicia was looking around when she suddenly shrieked. Pointing her finger, everyone looked in that direction. There stood a beautiful muscular unicorn. They stood quietly admiring the beautiful unicorn. The unicorn calmed down and began to graze peacefully in front of them. Only Palm Savita expressed her bewilderment about why everyone marveled at a common unicorn, as if she hadn't just marveled along with everyone else. According to legend, unicorns are intelligent and noble creatures. Usually they are difficult to approach, as they only let innocent girls near them. Julie was curious to know how unicorns treat innocent boys. He and Macon laughed at the joke, and Macon suggested they try it. Gil Lee was afraid to touch the unicorn, but he hoped it wouldn't kick him. And Lucy was already stroking the unicorn, and assuring the others that he was kind. Palm Savita approached them saying she wanted to pet the unicorn too. The girl stroked the unicorn and enjoyed being with him. He stood still and relaxed, and he seemed to be enjoying it too. Meanwhile, Gilly is desperately jealous and wants to pet the unicorn, but is afraid to approach. Alicia came up to them. She wanted to pet the unicorn too. She tried to pet the unicorn too, but for some reason, it reared up and Alicia wouldn't let her come near, and Alicia couldn't understand why the unicorn reacted to her like that. Palm Savita playfully nudged her elbow, saying that she wasn't such a saint. This incident greatly upset Alicia. She couldn't calm down. She said it was all a misunderstanding, and that the unicorn was strange. Julie responded by telling her she was calling an animal that couldn't even answer, but Alicia didn't calm down. She felt like everyone should know that she wasn't like that. In response to Alicia's lament, Palm Savita wondered if all priests were so uptight. She didn't understand why the beautiful unicorn let the thief touch her and rejected her. Alicia wondered what could be wrong with her and cried. Lucy approached her with the unicorn and said she had accidentally pulled the unicorn's mane. When Alicia appeared, that's why he was acting up. Alicia was now hugging the unicorn and crying with happiness. The unicorn calmly let herself be hugged and stroked. The horn of the unicorn had magical powers and was renowned for its powerful healing properties, and that's why the horn of the unicorn was worth much money. Palm Savita told everyone this, and Yuli immediately suspected her of criminal intentions against the unicorn. He and Alicia thought Palm Savita wanted to cut off the unicorn's horn for money, so they persuaded her not to. They argued furiously until Lucy, riding the unicorn, interrupted them. She said that the unicorn wanted to show them a shortcut, and they should follow her. Everyone piled into the carriage and followed the unicorn, who showed them the way, looking at the fabulous beauty around him. Yuli wished he had a phone and could photograph. He looked at the scenery they were passing by, and thought he would remember such moments when he returned to his world. He thought that to get home, he'd have to find the dragon heart sooner rather than later. Lucy finally looked back and told them they had arrived. Mirror Lake lay before them. They were amazed at Mirror Lake's size and beauty. Gilly Lee said it was so huge and looked more like the sea. He leaned into the water and saw his clear reflection. Gilly Lee was thirsty and reached out to scoop up the water, but he was interrupted by Palm Savita, roughly slipping her belt around Gilly's arm and pulling him away from the water. He only had time to shriek in surprise, and they mutually shouted at each other. Gilly didn't understand Palmaya Savita's action. She explained to him that he must have decided to leave this world. If you touch the water of Mirror Lake, it will just swallow it up. Palm Savita explained she used the twig as an example to show how Mirror Lake absorbs an object, and Goli shouted at her that she should have said so beforehand. She just remembered it. Palm Savita explained to Goli. She called the others to look at the lake's reflection. In the reflection, she was still holding the branch the lake had already swallowed. It was a creepy lake. Then Gao Li created a fireball and sent it into Mirror Lake. The fireball did not disperse, but was wholly absorbed by the Mirror Lake. And Alicia reminded him that Mirror Lake was believed to be connected to another dimension. Gully remembered that he had heard about it too. It was called Mirror World. It looked peaceful on the outside, but it could be chaotic inside. If something went into the lake, it never came back out. They couldn't even use the raft to get to the other side. The lake would swallow it up. Joel Lee thought for a moment. He specified the approximate location of the fairy palace. Pomsaveta thought it was somewhere across the lake, but she and her father had never crossed the lake. Then Yuli asked her to look at her father's diary entries. Suddenly the ELLs that had been circling them flew across the lake. They continued to discuss options for crossing the lake. It was also dangerous to use a spell and fly across the lake. There was a chance of not calculating the amount of mana and falling into the lake. Gilly thought there was already a problem with obtaining the first part of the dragon heart. Looking toward Els who had flown away, Lucy saw him coming back. She even saw someone following him, and they saw the Pegasus flying in their direction after the Els. This pleased Megan as well. It was the first time they had seen a unicorn and Pegasi. They thanked Els for bringing Pegasi to help them. The Pegasi showed that they were ready to move them. He knew there was a safe way out, which pleased Guile Lee. But Palm Savita was skeptical because Mirror Lake would be below them. He thanked Palm Savita for the information she had given them, and said she didn't have to continue with them. But Palm Savita refused to leave them. She hoped they would meet the Fairy Queen, and she would give them her treasures. And now they're flying across the Mirror Lake on the backs of Pegasi. Gil Lee shrieked with fear next to him on another Pegasus. Palm Savita was afraid in flight. Gao Li asked Palm Savita if her father could have gotten to the fairy palace. Palm Savita doubted it. He hoped the dragon heart part was in the fairy queen's possession. However, Gao Li was worried when he was told that Faye wasn't there. They noticed the wind had become strong, and a hurricane was brewing ahead. Palm Savita lamented why she had only flown with them. They flew into a raging hurricane and argued with her. Palm Savita blamed them for putting her in such a dangerous situation, and Guli reminded her he had offered her a place to stay. She objected that he hadn't given her the other money. Without it, she had to wait for them on the beach. Lucy interrupted their argument by telling them to hold on tight. The wind was very strong, and Gully thought he couldn't leave this world so easily. Suddenly they flew into a windless area. Gio Lee wanted to relax, but Lucy warned that the storm was heading their way again. Together with the Pegasus, they were whirled and blown away by the hurricane wind, and suddenly it was over. They were on the opposite shore of Mirror Lake, and they were alive this time. Julie was sure they would die. Alicia thanked God that they had gotten there safely. She was angrily hissed at by Palm Savita, who thought they were on the verge of leaving this world. The instrument indicated that their target was close by, so they were on the right track. Jolie checked the gauge. Lucy called out to them she saw a beautiful castle and pointed to it. She could feel a shard of dragon heart from there, and suspected it was the fairy palace. They set off in the direction of the fairy palace. Soon they reached beautiful flowers, which were medicinal herbs used in elixirs. As a mage, Gao Li should have known them, but since his training was too fast, he didn't study herbs and elixirs, and Palm Savita began to collect these valuable plants. Yuli was outraged, and thought these herbs were the property of the Fae, and should not be touched. Alicia joined him in his opinion. She felt that the Palm Civet was desecrating the garden of flowers and herbs planted by the fairies, and she was against. They entered the palace. Everything was overgrown with various plants, but there were no inhabitants to be seen. They walked inside the palace. Lucy reached a door braided with plants, and said she could feel the dragon heart behind. Then the door opened by itself and they stepped inside. Welcome, they heard. Inside, a fairy greeted them. She introduced herself as the fairy queen Lillian, the mistress of the fairy forest. The last of her kind. They were surprised. They thought fairies were a different size. She was no different. The fairy queen explained that it was because of the magic of the palace. The palace was created for the interaction of different races. Therefore, to talk to a representative of another race, it is desirable to be the same size. She added, you have to be respectful of guests who come from far away. She offered to escort them to the reception area. She hadn't had visitors for a long time, so she apologized in advance for any awkwardness. Gil Li replied that they had visited her suddenly without warning. Gil Li asked how the fairy queen knew they were coming today. She said that elves had told her. The wind spirits were also worried about the visit. Queen Fei apologized for their inconvenience. Gully clarified how to address her. It was okay to call her Lillian. He asked Lillian if she knew why he had come here. She replied that she was not powerful enough to know such a thing. He began to speak, and wondered if he should tell the others what he was looking for, since they had come all this way for him. He told Lillian he was there to find one of the dragon hearts, and asked Lillian if she knew where to find a piece of the dragon heart. Alicia and Maken gasped. Turned out that he had been looking for the dragon heart all this time only. Tom Savannah asked why he wouldn't go to the dragon to ask for it. Giali was surprised that the dragon could give him the dragon heart. Then Lillian summarized that they had come to find one of the dragon heart pieces. Joel Lee confirmed and added that Lillian had the part. After that, Lillian asked McCann, Alicia and Pom Savita to go out for a while. She wanted to talk to Gyl Lee and Lucy alone. Then McCann and Alicia led the loudly indignant Pom Savita out of the room, and out themselves. She asked them what they would do if Lillian refused to give up a piece of the dragon heart. Julie found it difficult to answer this question, since he had never considered it. But Lillian withdrew the question, saying that she was joking. She said that, from the beginning, she thought she saw Lucy somewhere, and then realized she was Layer's daughter. Lucy said that was right. The Layer used to come here with the other dragons who were to be treated by the fairies. It wasn't an easy thing to accomplish. Lillian remembered him. She asked why Gully wanted the dragon heart. It was the only reminder of the arch lion's willingness to bear the pain of a broken heart for peace. After her words, Gully was ashamed to say he needed the dragon heart to solve his problems. He decided to tell the truth and ask Lillian for help. And Gao Li told Liliana the story of his arrival in this world. She asked if Lear was still working on the dimension gate. He said he probably was. He thought maybe Lear was having fun with Lucy's mom. Then Lillian thoughtfully removed the pendant from her neck and gave it to Gao Li. This pendant contained a part of the dragon heart. She said that if Layer asked him to find the pieces of the dragon heart, there was a good reason, and added that she didn't need it anymore. Gao Li asked Lillian what she was talking about. At that moment, Pom Savita entered the room. He asked if Pom Savita had heard their conversation, but nothing could be heard outside, and she was tired of waiting. So she went in. What they were talking about was whether he was able to get the dragon heart. Pom Savita started questioning Julie. He said she didn't need to know. He asked Lillian to explain why. She said she no longer needed the dragon heart, and why she was the last fairy. What happened to the other fairies, and if they even existed. She warned me it would be a long story, and she began to tell it. There were different races in the world. Humans, half-humans, elves, fairies and dragons. When the dimension gates were first created, they malfunctioned, creating a passage between the material world of humans and half-humans and the astral world and the dragon world. Then the fairies could sneak from the fairy world into the material world. Fortunately, most of them were able to relocate successfully, but it was tough for the fairies to adapt to the material world. They tried very hard, but everything did not go according to plan, most likely due to the influence of the material world. Some individuals began to increase in size and became like humans. Wings disappeared, and physical strength developed more than that of other fairies. They left the forest where they lived and began to mingle with other races. so they changed faster, so the fairies split into two races. The changed fairies became known as elves. This information delighted Alicia. She knew that elves were fairy creatures, but she hadn't even considered that they might be mutated fairies. Unlike the elves who quickly adapted to the material world, the rest of the fairies tried to change their environment to customize it for them. But it took them a while to realize this idea was impossible. The half-humans cleared the ruins, especially for fey humans made bricks. Elves created gardens and dragons built this palace using magic. This palace is a gift from the other races as a symbol of alliance. It gave the fairies hope and strength when they were ready to give up. Yet the fairies didn't change. They could only watch as other races evolved, created civilization, and sang and danced at festivals. After some time, the witch Dr. Ragdam began the sacred battle. He became an enemy of all races. Humans, elves, and half-humans united and fought against black mages and monsters. The dragons were too strong to interfere in the war, although they supported the forces of light in every possible way. And the fairies decided to avoid the war and hide in the fairy forest. They thought the war had nothing to do with them. They feared the forest might be invaded, so they expanded it and used magic to prevent it. They didn't know the demonic energy was still on the continent. It spread epidemically through the fairy forest, and most fairies left the world. The surviving fairies were terrified that they, too, might die and they couldn't produce new fairies. The world rejected them because they turned their backs on it. They got what they deserved. The fairies who survived left this world through the dimension gate that Lillian opened. They returned to their world and became spirits again. Fae had no desire to change. They didn't make the effort, because they didn't see the need, and were excluded from the race for survival. And they escaped again. That's the story Lillian told the travelers. Mackin said sadly that the fairy forest would no longer be home to fairy creatures. At this point, Lillian wanted to end the conversation, and was grateful they could listen to what she had to say. Then Palm Savita dared to ask about her father's disappearance. Lillian remembered when she came with her father. Even though she was just a child, Queen Fae was already a queen. Then when the energy runs out, the fairy falls asleep forever, and the queen appoints her successor in advance. Liliana asked Palm Savita if she wanted to know her father's whereabouts. She said she came for the money, but Liliana didn't believe her, and said Palm Savita still missed her father. Even though she denied it, the fairy forest has a barrier. Anyone who tries to enter without permission must be punished. But didn't Palm Savita's father get out of there with the help of the fairy? Julie asked her that's the problem. Lillian replied the barrier was created to protect the Fae from invasion by other races, but it was later strengthened to protect other races from the Fae, except for Lillian, who was protected by the powers of the Fairy Queen. All the other fairies were infected with a disease of demonic energy. It was because pollen fell from Fae's wings. Palm Civet jumped up and there was a commotion. Everyone remembered that she had tasted the pollen, but Lillian reassured everyone that unless there's a direct hit from the fairy's wings, it's fine. You can be infected within 3 minutes of pollen exposure. And the one at the Palm Civet is already safe. She's over 10 years old. The Palm Civet glanced at the huddled company and asked Lillian what she wanted to know about why her father had come to the fairy forest. And Lillian answered that he had been infected. He didn't look sick, but he was a carrier. Palm Savita's father, Camille, infected another man with her mom. And Camille himself was accidentally infected by the fairy Lilalia. The queen found out too late, but Pam Savita herself didn't know what her mom was sick with. She was told her mother had pneumonia. Alicia entered the conversation and explained that disease caused by demonic energy is complicated to cure even with divine power. Many do not survive the treatment. Lillian continued that if she had known immediately that Palm Savita's father had been infected, he would have been quarantined. Then he came to the fairy forest to find a cure for his wife. He asked Lililia for help because the usual herbs had stopped working. He believed that the magical power in the unicorn's horn would cure his wife, but the horn was almost impossible to obtain. When the unicorn leaves this world, the magic power of the horn immediately disappears. The only way to do this is to cut off the horn while the unicorn sleeps. but they can only sleep when they're near an innocent girl. Then why didn't the fairy they were supposed to meet come? Asked Palm Savita. She thought her father had deceived her, and he just stood silent with a sad expression on his face. Lillian replied quietly that fairy Lililia had already left the world because of illness, and continued to tell her story. Having learned that Camille was bringing various rare plants from the fairy forest, other people wanted to get rich from it. He refused, but later he was forced to agree. When they threatened him and left his journal and fairy dust at home, he promised it would be his last trip. Camille watched the men plunder the forest they had reached, and told them not to be so greedy. They gathered what they could. While we have the chance, we must take out anything valuable, they said when the fairy called out to him. She apologized for his family's suffering. She held out to him the rare healing flower of Unisha. One of the pickers spotted them and shouted loudly to attract attention. The chief shouted that the fairy was very rare, and that if they sold it they would be rich. All the pickers ran to catch fairy. Camille blocked their way, and shouted that fairy should fly away faster. He stood in the way of the greedy mob, and tried to convince them that Faye shouldn't be hurt. They didn't want to hear or listen to him and only thought about money. Camille prevented them from earning money, and they went wild. They were outnumbered and stronger. They pushed him away and ran to catch Fairy. One of them sent Camille to the other world. In front of Fairy, the chief of the collectors was cursing a lot. Why did they send a man who could help explore and rob the fairy forest to the grave? The senior ordered a search of Camille to see if there were any notes, but he left his notes at home. They also found phase powder at this. Palm Savita cried out that her mother might be well if she had a Unisia flower. Quite possibly. Tunisia is one of the best medicinal plants in the fairy forest. It is not effective for spirits and fairies, but is excellent for humans. So Palm Savita's mom could be cured. But Pam Savita couldn't believe it. She'd spent all the past years believing that her father had abandoned them. She'd spent her whole life blaming him. But now, after Lillian told her, she didn't know what to do. She cried and decided that Stefan and his men, who ruined her father and used Palm Savita's talents for years, were more important. Palm Savita's father went into the forest to get medicine for his wife, and was treated like that. Julie concluded, so you can never treat people well. Lucy concluded, and Gully thought she was overdoing it. And Palm Savita didn't know the truth and asked Stefan for help. She did everything she was asked to do to pay off her debts. She borrowed from Stefan at a high interest rate to cure her mom. She then decided to get revenge on him for everything. She thanked Lillian for telling the truth about her father. Now Palm Savita knew how things were. Lillian said that in the future they would face difficulties at every turn, but they would be able to overcome them all, because their strength lies in the uniqueness of each of them. She asked Goli if she would return to the spirit world. She shook her head negatively. She is the queen of the fairies, and queens never leave the palace. Then she added that if they had a chance, they could stop by any time because they were all friends of Fae. They were heading back. Gilly turned around and looked at the fairy palace one last time. There was no telling if he would be able to return here. Palm Savita approached him and asked if he had been given any treasure. Besides the dragon heart, she kept on demanding to see the dragon heart. But Gully didn't understand her. She was just crying, and now she was excited about the treasure. Finally Palm Savita said he was petty, and that she didn't want anything from him, leaving Julie alone. The Pegasi were waiting for them at the same place. Palm Savita was anxious to get out of the forest, as she was fed up with it. And Lucy, on the other hand, loved the forest. Maybe it was because she was half-elf. And Gilly thought he had the first part of the dragon heart shard in his hand. He felt that he didn't know how to absorb the dragon heart. A dragon named Archlion broke his dragon heart into 4 shards. Each race called them by a different name. People dubbed them Philosopher's Stones. Elves are the tree of life. Fairies called the shards wings of the soul, and the halflings called them tears of the earth. One of the dragon heart pieces was taken by Lair, and placed in the hilt of the black sword. One of the dragon heart pieces lay in Gully's hand, and he didn't know what to do with it. The Pegasus transported them back to the opposite shore of Mirror Lake, and flew away. Alicia and Lucy waved goodbye and thanked them. Joey asked Lucy's precious pendant if it was the dragon heart. She replied that she was sure. Palm Savita snuck up on them and got curious. She thought the bling was worth a lot of money, and whined if she could hold the bling. But Gil Lee wouldn't give up the dragon heart to Palm Savita's greedy hands, even though she thought it would look better on her. Alicia was even interested. She specified that it was the jewelry of the Fey Queen. Guile confirmed it. Alicia liked it too, but didn't wear jewelry because clerics weren't allowed to. He felt sorry for it because he thought it would suit Alicia. She was surprised. She'd never thought about jewelry before. She wondered if I should try it once. Jilly was surprised since she had just said it was forbidden, but Alicia calmed him down. Because no one was here to complain about her, she ignored Pomsaveta, who was jealous. Alicia had never worn jewelry before. She enjoyed trying on the dragon heart necklace. She really liked the jewelry. Julie complimented Alicia, and Pomsaveta said that it wouldn't suit her. When Alicia returned the dragon heart to Julie, Lucy asked why he hadn't tried to feel it. It didn't occur to Julie, and Yahello tried to feel the dragon heart. He was enveloped by the radiance, and felt the energy emanating from this piece of jewelry. He remembered Layer's instruction. He would need mana to absorb the power of the dragon heart. So Layer embedded the crystal inside his magic circle. He felt the crystal Layer had placed in him start to react. Lucy told him she was pretty sure it was the dragon heart. But Lucy didn't know how to absorb the power of the dragon heart, since she wasn't a wizard. Even Pomsaveta wondered what to say to absorb the power. Gale Lee confirmed after that. His magic circle would increase. He has completed the teacher's task of finding the artifact, and can now return Macon. And Alicia asked him. He told them there were only 4 pieces of the dragon heart, so there were 3 more to find. Pomsaveta liked it, since there were 3 more shards of the same value. Gully realized that she was up to something. She said she was curious, and suspiciously pleased when Pomsaveta stepped away from him. In the morning, Gully sat down to check the location of the nearest Dragonheart shard. On the device, Alicia asked him what the device was. He replied that it could locate parts of the Dragonheart. Pomsaveta intervened in their conversation. She too was interested in the device and asked how it worked. He explained that she had to put mana into the device, and then it would show her the nearest place with a piece of the Dragonheart. It takes a lot of mana. You have to be a level 4 wizard. She was disappointed even if Pomsaveta stole the device from Gowli. She couldn't use it. Gowli fed mana into the device, and the device showed that there was another part of the dragon heart nearby. Gowli was overjoyed. His joy chilled Lucy, as the device pointed to the shard he had in his possession. She questioned his mental capacity. So if it can't absorb this dragon heart shard, the device won't be able to detect the other pieces. They packed their things and set out on the road out of the fairy forest, and Giali shared his fear with McCann. In the wagon, Alicia was reading a book. Pomsaveta was lying on the seat, and Lucy was chatting with Else. Pomsaveta asked what Lucy was talking about. It turned out that Camille's grave was nearby. Else told Lucy about it, and Lucy asked him to stop. The fairies buried Pomsaveta's father. By all human customs, she and her mother had suffered so much for that man. Pomsaveta couldn't decide whether she wanted to visit his grave. Alicia tried to calm her down, but Pomsaveta didn't think. Alicia couldn't give her advice. She believed that the clergy lived a life without care. They were alienated from worldly affairs, did not care about anything, and made no effort to survive. If Pomsaveta doesn't want to go, no one's forcing her, Lucy told her. But Pomsaveta replied that she didn't say she didn't want to go. Lucy replied that she could just go silently. She wanted to go to her father's grave. Even though she didn't like it, Lucy told her that was a good place to start. Joel Lee thought Pomsaveta showed weakness before Lucy, but she didn't like it either. They came to a clearing in the woods, where the bodies of people who had left this world lay. Pomsaveta recognized a medallion with the coat of arms of the Stephen clan on one of them. They couldn't escape the forest, and probably fought each other over hunger. Macon suggested. Alicia said they should be put to death. Joel Lee agreed and suggested that they be put in a mass grave. They worked together to create a common burial ground. They made a cross, and Pomsaveta didn't like that they put her father in the ground. She just wanted to visit his grave. Flowers grew thickly on Camille's grave. Pomsaveta stood over his grave. She asked Alicia to pray so Papa could rest in peace. Father's diary and a bag of fey powder. Pomsaveta left among the flowers covering his grave, and Giali offered to rebreathe him in his homeland. But Pomsaveta refused. She decided that her father should stay here. Plus, she got Lillian's permission to come here whenever she wanted. When Gilly asked her if she would continue to work for Stefan, Pomsaveta was outraged. She said she would take revenge as soon as she returned, and Julia asked her if she had forgiven her father. She said she hadn't quite forgiven him yet. On their return, Savita suggested a feast of all sorts of goodies. Lucy asked hopefully if it would include meat. Makan was also in agreement. On the way out of the forest, Els headed back to Lillian. Lucy waved at him and told him to tell Lillian hello. Sveta also demanded that Gao Li give her the rest. Gao Li realized that they were almost out. Since she was asking for money, they planned to reach La Rochelle before sunset. I was hungry and sleepy. The carriage drove quietly. Lucy slept very soundly on the road. Suddenly she woke up and shouted for the carriage to stop because she sensed danger. She had the same premonition as when she'd met the witchfinders. Savita demanded clarification. They said that they had fought black magicians before, so Lucy was able to sense their presence. When Savita learned this information, she was outraged. She would not have worked with them if she had known about it earlier. They suspected it, so they kept silent. Gao Li thought to himself. To detect the ambush, Gao Li cast the evil detection seal. The seal showed that the enemies were close and very dangerous. Gao Li ordered everyone to be on guard. Many fireballs flew at them. Gao Li summoned his magic staff. He managed to put a protective dome around the people, and they were unharmed, but one of the fireballs hit the wagon, damaged it, and spooked the horses. They decided the rest of us should hide behind the damaged wagon. Instead of hiding, Savita continued to swear, accusing Julie of cheating and withholding information. Several arrows almost hit Savita, and more arrows kept flying. But Gully used magic to shoot down all the arrows, and shouted to the lurking enemies to show themselves. And Gully sent a slashing wind in the direction where the attacks were coming from. Lucy ran to the same place with a naked sword. Gully asked her to be careful, and she told him not to worry. And Gil Li once again urged the attackers to show themselves. One of the attackers said that he had been told the truth. Gil Li felt a familiar sensation, like the mysterious energy that Makos liked to summon. He quickly set up a force field. He could barely hold back the torrent of mysterious power attacking him. This flow did not weaken but only intensify. At last the attack was broken off. Puffs of smoke rose and trees felled by the force lay fallen. The exhausted Gale Li realized that he was facing a level 6 mage. They came out of hiding. Before him stood some unfamiliar black magicians. The chief of them said he wondered who had done this to Makos, and Gilly was younger than black magician thought. He calculated the ambush, but Gilly's team spotted it quickly. Otherwise they would have gone to the end of the world. But Guile told them that they had demonic energy, and weren't hard to spot. He was surprised that they'd already heard about him. Of course he was known as the Little Wizard, who dared to challenge the higher powers. The black magician answered him, and the black magician prepared to cast another spell. The exhausted Gaoli only had to curse. However, black magician said he didn't believe that a magician of Gaoli's age could achieve the 5th level of magic. But now he had seen it with his own eyes. He said that his disciples were black magicians, but they were barely at the level of Julie. The disciples all said they were ashamed of the master. While Black Mage was talking, Gale Li wondered if Lucy could deal with those hiding in the forest. He looked at the carriage and thought they couldn't drive. What were they going to do next? The Black Mage interrupted his thoughts and told him not to think about escaping. As it was useless, he continued that no one would get out of here alive. And the black magician began to weave a new spell. He sent a stream of prismatic dispersion energy towards Gaoli. After the arcane skill one should use, the Ray Gaoli thought about creating a dark matter barricade. The two spells met, and dark matter began to absorb the energy of prismatic atomization. Rapidly, that surprised the black wizard. He hadn't expected his spell to be effectively countered. Julie thought that light and dark are two opposites. He'd be in the other world if he hadn't practiced. He used prismatic spray. Julie thought so. He launched a huge boulder at the black magician. He destroyed him. What is the 7th grade mage doing here? Julie asked Black Wizard. He replied that since the 6th grade mage, Makos, had been defeated, he had to come then. Julie clarified that it turned out that the big shot had decided to deal with him. The black mage was flattered, but declined the honor of being the big shot. He said that even though he's a level 7 mage, he's not even close to him. The black mage listened and commanded one of his apprentices, Colin, to get help and catch those hiding in the forest. Colin ran off to do his errands while Gilly worried about Lucy, who was just in the woods. At this moment, Gilly directed a lightning charge spell towards the black mages. The black mage only laughed at this insignificant spell for him, and to the chain lightning that Zhou created. The black magician only laughed in response. Then Zhou shouted to his friends, who were hiding behind the carriage, to run into the forest. They ran away with the thunderbolt spell. The black mage held back the lightning raging around him and shouted, "Catch your lightning bolts and return them to Zhou." The latter had a hard time parrying them. The friends ran as fast as they could. From where the magicians fought, lightning raged behind them. What kind of power it was! Guile thought it knocked the staff out of his hands. He sat on the ground almost exhausted, and the black magician was testing him. He initially thought Gilly had something to do with the Tower of Sages, but it wasn't. He had a question. Why was Gilly meddling in the affairs of the black magicians? At this point, Gilly tried to justify that he didn't do it on purpose, that he didn't care about the black mages and that it just happened. But the black magician didn't believe him. He accused Zhou of robbing them of the Mona Stone mine, and he made an offer to Zhou. He offered to surrender because he was interested in him, and promised to take Zhou friends to him. But Zhou replied that even if he got it, Zhou friends would never obey. At this phrase, Palm Civet from the woods cried out, saying that he should give up and that she would agree. He left no choice for the black magician, and he understood Li's position. He told him not to blame him for being sent to the next world, and uttered the power word stun. At this moment, Gao Li thought that he was finished. He didn't know how to resist it. While the black magician was urging him to side with the Dark One, he would leave this world if he resisted. Just side with black magic. Gil Li felt like his head was splitting. He couldn't move and his brain was being squeezed. He remembered his training with serpents. In the days of mana injections, he realized that compared to his training with serpents, what he was feeling now was nothing. And Gully threw off the shackles of the black mage's spell. With a powerful effort of will, the black magician was amazed. He thought it was unbelievable that Gully had a great command of his mind, and added that that's probably why Gale Li can read spells so fast. Gale Li replied that after his teacher's rigorous training, the black magician's torture was just a tickle. The black magician wondered who Julie's teacher was, but to himself Julie thought it was so painful that he was ready to leave this world, and Gully sent a fireball at the black magician. But Black Mage easily blocked Gully's spell, although Gully wasn't sure about the rest. He realized that he could use his skills faster than the enemy, so he decided to attack without stopping. Ice arrows replaced magic projectiles. He attacked even though he knew he couldn't defeat a 7th grade master. He wanted to buy some time to escape with the boys, so he sent a spear of fire at the enemy. The black magician's figure appeared out of the smoke. He said that Gao Li had raised a lot of dust, and didn't understand what he was trying to do. He said it was impossible to defeat him, and that Gao Li didn't think he could escape. But Gilly couldn't give up. He thought he wouldn't know until he tried and continued to attack, while putting up a shield against another attack. Gilly felt that this attack differed from the previous ones. This time the black magician was assisted by his apprentice. Gilly had to confront both of them. He thought he could barely handle 1 and 2, which would kill him, so he had to focus on the other mage. A cry for help came from the forest. Gao Li looked back there. Could it be his friends in trouble? His opponent marveled that he still had the nerve to worry about his comrades in such a situation. That he was unbelievable. And the black magician asked whose orders Julie obeyed. He wondered why Black Mage was interested in him, and told the black wizard that he didn't have to answer his questions. He decided to see how long Julie would last, if he still expected to defeat his opponents. He once again attacked Julie with the stun force word. His attack was interrupted by an exclamation enough. It came from Les. Everyone turned around. Lucy was standing at the edge of the forest. She held the blade of her sword at the throat of Black Mage. Colin's apprentice, she ordered the mages to ask for staff, under threat of sending Colin to the other world. The black magician told Colin that he knew he was useless, but he didn't expect him to be this useless. He ordered his second apprentice, Camp, to deal with them by capturing the magician's apprentice. Lucy didn't expect his comrades to care about his life. Without answering them, Camp began to cast a fire spell. Julie shouted for her to run, But at that moment a McCann as a half-tiger jumped at Camp. The Camp sent a fireball at McCann, but the McCann continued to attack. Then Camp used the wind-slashing gust. McCann was about to reach him, but a powerful spell slammed into him. This spell struck McCann and he could not attack anymore. It was cast by the Black Mage himself. How dare he attack him? The Camp was angry. He was going to take McCann down. Gilly shouted to McCann to be careful, but he wasn't allowed to be distracted for long. The Black Mage intercepted his attention by sending an ice-striking spell at Gil Lee. That's why Gil Lee didn't have time to help Megan. Camp had almost formed a spell that would send Megan to the other side. But Camp didn't see that behind him in the tree was a dark figure with eyes glowing in the darkness. He was surprised when his mage's staff was slapped with a leather strap and ripped from his hand after holding Camp's magical wand. Pomsaveta decided to take it for herself. Behind Camp, the colossal figure of half-tiger Mechon towered behind him, and it was all over for Camp. The apprentice Collins saw what had happened to Camp, but could do nothing. Lucy's sword glittered at his throat. Then Pomsaveta called Alicia and said she could come out. She was ready to take care of Macon. Alicia came out of the forest holding a stick, and Alicia, with the help of divine power, began to restore Makano's health. After curing Makan, Alicia asked Gilly if she should treat him. She saw he was not feeling well, but Gilly wasn't ready to be treated yet. He hadn't dealt with the enemy yet. The enemy couldn't have guessed that things would turn out this way. Gil Lee offered to surrender, but he couldn't do that because if he walks away with nothing, what's he gonna say? Okay. He had many things he wanted to ask Yul Lee, but to not jeopardize the mission, the Black Magician decided it was time to send Yul Lee to the next world. And the Black Magician began to work some outlandish sorcery. His body soared and sank into the process. The stone Lucy threw at him shattered against the Black Mage's surrounding defenses. The jokes were over and he sent diamond dust to his friends. He created a powerful spell, and a wave of diamond crystals, from the tiniest to the largest, went from the Black Mage towards his friends. Yuli had a wall of fire to protect him from, but diamond dust could easily penetrate through the fire. I had to think of something else, but Yuli's mana was already running low. Alicia called out to him. She and Pomsaveta had their backs to the diamond dust mechanism. Gil Lee thought they must have escaped the spell. Next to Gil Lee with her flaming magic sword, Lucy stood up. It was useless. There was a vast difference between the magician's powers, but Gil Lee and Lucy stood shoulder to shoulder against his spell. While Gil Lee was urging Lucy to sacrifice herself, take the boys and run away, Lucy refused. Julie suddenly started coughing, staggered and fell without strength. He used up all of his mana and begged his friends for forgiveness, begging them to flee. But then, the dragon heart shard on his chest shone with an awakening glow. The light coming from the dragon heart was so bright that Black Mage had to squeeze his eyes shut. He didn't understand what was happening, or where the light was coming from. He thought it was some kind of trick and he got angry. He said that nothing would help them, and they would all leave this world anyway. Lucy alone couldn't handle the Black Magician's spell flow at this time, and Lair began to react to Gully's crystal implanted in his body. The crystal glowed, and Gully felt his body was being broken from the inside. He screamed. He remembered Sir Pyre's lessons. She said he was in pain because the magic circles penetrated his body. If he can overcome the pain, he can level up. She told him to be strong and not to forget his purpose. Through the pain he realized that he's looking for the dragon heart to level up and return home. He heard Lucy screaming at him that he could do it, and she believed in him. He told himself and his friends that he would live. He didn't realize how, but he found himself in some unfamiliar forest with palm trees. He looked around and saw a man sitting on a rock. The man asked him if he knew where he was. Jolie assumed he was in some tropical forest. The stranger said he was right, and this was the lower rainforest. It is home to many animals and plants, and you could also say it's the lungs of the continent of Arsenius. But what are you doing here? Jolie asked. The stranger said this was his home and asked if Julie knew who he was. But this was the first time Julie had seen him, and he thought that for some reason, the people of this continent acted similarly when they met him. Then the stranger decided he should introduce himself. His name was Archlion. Jolie exclaimed, remembering where he had heard that name. Archlion was the madman's name. That is the great dragon. The dragon noticed the caveat and agreed there was some truth to it. Gil Li asked if he had left that world and entered the new one, but it turned out to be Arch-Lion's dreams, stored in the dragon's heart. Mana is the source of all life and matter. Everything that was born with mana must return to its original form. This is also where everything that couldn't convert to mana is. What must happen is bound to happen sooner or later. It's just not the right time. And Gilly has to go back. He asked where he should go, and the Arch-Lion sent Gilly back to where he was needed. Back into his body, and exhausted Lucy collapsed next to her blade. She could no longer stand up to the black mage alone. The magician was triumphant. He thought they had a trump card stashed against him, but since his opponents didn't have a trump card, he would send them all to the grave. In the meantime, Gully came to his senses and stirred, rising from the ground. Seeing that Gully was beginning to show signs of life, Lucy called out to him. She told him to get up quickly and didn't act like a fool. He was the only one who could stand up to the black mage, and had to get up faster and do something. And Gao Li got up. It wasn't easy for him, but he got up seeing that Gao Li was getting up. The black magician couldn't contain his surprise. How could he stand up? Hey kid, how could you survive? Black magician couldn't understand and turned to Gao Li. Getting to his feet, Gao Li laughed. Black mage didn't understand why he was laughing. He assumed that Gao Li's mind was disturbed after being resurrected, and Gao Li was just happy. He turned to Lucy and told her she had done a good job, and could now leave it to him. What can a mage with a low mana level do? Said Black Mage, turning to Gully and making an inviting gesture with his hand. Gully replied that he doesn't even know, but thinks he can do many things. And to give you an example, he easily directed a powerful fire tornado at the Black Mage. What kind of power is that? How could this boy, on the verge of death and having used up all his mana, do such a thing? The Black Magician thought. Gil Li's friends were also shocked by what was happening. Even Lucy, who had forgotten her tiredness, looked on with her mouth open in surprise. But the Black Magician came to his senses. He threatened Gil Li again, saying he would leave this world prematurely. With the new magic circle, Gil Li's mana had fully recovered and had more mana. Julie was serious about winning. He easily sent the next, even more powerful spell to the Black Mage, and the Black Magician couldn't overcome it and went to the next world. Julie waited for a while for the cinders to clear to be sure. His friends were also happy about his victory. They immediately ran up to Julie and Lucy. They were very worried about Julie and Lucy especially. Alicia Julie confirmed that it was indeed quite dangerous. Pom Savita approached Julie. She asked why he didn't immediately warn them that the black magicians were pursuing them. I could have left this world. After he apologized, she reminded him of the risk-reward and offered to crack him to jog his memory. Alicia stood up for him and said, they might have left this world if it weren't for him, and that Pom Savita should be grateful to him. But Pom Savita compared her concern to her wives and asked her not to interfere in their conversation. Alicia didn't know how to answer her. They were all partners and friends, and Jill Lee tried to reconcile the girls. Jill Lee, who was interested in Lucy's outburst, replied that he was the one who absorbed the dragon heart after his mana was depleted entirely. Friends congratulated Gully on reaching 6th grade, and Pom Savita was surprised that he was a 5th grade mage. When she heard the confirmation, she muttered quietly, saying that you can't tell by intelligence, and that it's interesting. The Black Wizard's disciples were tightly bound. Now the question was whether the carriage could be repaired. We also had to find the horses hidden in the forest. Then Alicia suggested the three go for the horses with Mekon and Pom. Savita and Gil Lee and Lucy were left to rest and recuperate. Although Julie's mana had increased, he still felt tired. He would have left this world if he hadn't been promoted to the 6th grade. Lucy suddenly said that this was not the end, and pointed to the staff of the black mage he had defeated. There was still demonic energy in the staff. Julie took it in his hands to examine it. Lucy's warning shout rang out. A fireball flew at him. The explosion blew Gale Lee, but he put up a shield. The old magician approached them on horseback. He called him a restless boy, and accused him of sending a man to the other side. Suppose there were any other black magicians. Jolie was thinking. He asked Lucy to stay behind him, as he suspects this black mage might be stronger. In astonishment, Lucy stared at the old wizard, and tried to explain something to Jolie, but she was interrupted, surprised by the elf's presence. The old mage gazed at Lucy, and demanded that Jiali hand Lucy over to him. But Jiali could only betray Lucy through his lifeless body, and he told Magoo. He expressed his doubts that he could win the battle, and said that he would end all his evil deeds. The old magician rode his horse and launched an energy arrow at Gowli. Reflecting on the charges of the energy arrow, Gowli realized that this old mage was above 7th grade. In turn, the old magician thought that his opponent had the level of a core magician, and he didn't understand where these wizards came from, and where they were produced. Magic arrows, ice spears. Gully attacked his opponent with more and more spells. Dissipation crystal shield blocked the attacks of Gully. Old mage, he repelled my attack like a trifle. With astonishment thought Gully. The old mage also noted that his opponent had better magic than he thought, but he didn't give his opponent a chance, and started to cast Atomic Blast. But Maken in half-tiger form was already jumping on him, and Palm Savita was attacking from the other side. There was a massive explosion. This explosion struck Maken and Palm Savita. The old mage said they and their methods were pathetic, and asked how many he had sacrificed to get that kind of power. This accusation angered Jewel Lee, who told the mage it was the Witchfinder. But he was stopped by Lucy, who said that this man's energy was different. Then Jio Lee asked why she didn't say it right away. She said she tried to do it, but they wouldn't let her. If you think about it, there wasn't any demonic energy in his opponent's mana, and he turned to his opponent, that perhaps there was a misunderstanding, and he is not a black magician. But the old mage didn't believe him, because the staff that Gao Li kept holding in his hand was oozing demonic energy. At that moment he realized what was going on, and wondered why he was holding that staff. He's not stupid, he hastily said. It wasn't his staff, it was planted on him. But the magician says he's not making a convincing excuse, and he sounds like a boy. Joey thought he'd been getting told he was an idiot too often lately. He argued that he uses a different staff in battle, and it can be seen he displayed his staff with the words, that this alone is his primary weapon. The magician agreed that that argument was reasonable, and Gully thought it was time to decide whether he was stupid or smart. The magician got off his horse, and offered proof that Gully was not a black magician. Then he would stop fighting him. Gully wondered what proof he could give. The mage had already asked him how he had gotten such powerful strength at such an age, and Guile guessed that the magician suspected him of being a black magician. Because of his strength, he wondered how to explain it. He came up with a plausible explanation, stating that he was 70, but the magician didn't believe him. The mage was 67 years old, and understood perfectly well what a boy or a young man looked like. Lucy interrupted their argument. She said she was sick of watching and had to stop and slap Gully. Then Gully swore to his teacher that he was not a witch doctor. But the magician replied that it was unconscionable to betray his teacher. Alicia stood up for Gilly. She said he wasn't a black magician. But the magician didn't believe her either, and scolded Gilly for recruiting a priest. For such a convinced magician, Gully had run out of arguments. A new person appeared in the clearing. Leo came over and said that Gully was not a black magician. Everyone cheered and greeted Leo. The magician was indignant that they were insolent, and dared to address the prince without respect. They were surprised it turned out that Leo was a prince. Jiali asked Leo and Wizard what brought them here. One of the knights who had ridden into the clearing with Leo resented his interaction with the prince. He was indignant and demanded that Jiali kneel. But Leo calmed the knight down and said it was all right. His name was Sir Tomford. Sir Tomford understood and was silent. And Leo asked Jewel Lee to explain what was happening there. When Jewel Lee started to explain, Leo interrogated him to see if he understood correctly, that they were returning from the fairy forest. Leo explained his question, and many brave men entered the fairy forest, but they all went missing. Jewel Lee's team got out. They said they just went there with a man who somehow knew less. The surprised magician was only now convinced that Gua Li was not a black magician, and Leo once again confirmed for Marcus Christopher that Gua Li is not the black magician. The magician turned out to be the court wizard of the kingdom of Cadrain, Marquis Carleo von Christopher. This magician was so strong because he was a 7th grade court magician. Understood. Jewel Lee and Leo went on to introduce the people present. He reminded them he had defeated the witch doctor Makus in Hujongman village. Marcus Christopher asked if he was a 5th grader. Gil Lee modestly clarified that he had recently risen to 6th grade. They started to find out where the demonic energy came from. Gully pointed his finger at where the defeated 7th grade black mage was lying. Marquis Christopher found it hard to believe that a young mage could reach a high level to destroy a 7th grade mage. It was the first time he had encountered such a thing. He thought it was impossible to do it alone and used some gypsy tricks, and no luck. He asked Julie again what he would be like if he were not a black mage. Julie frankly asked what Marquis Christopher was listening to him. Meanwhile, Leo told Sir Tom Ford they had to finish off the surviving black magicians and their minions. Then Gio Lee pointed at the black magician's disciples and said, "Those tied-up guys were black wizards. They can be interrogated." He asked Leo again how they had gotten here. To answer briefly Leo, the knights and the mage had followed Gio Lee and company. They couldn't find the information on mana mines, so they bought it from the Thieves' Guild. They heard that the black magicians were pursuing Ju Lee's company, and they went after Ju Lee. And Gua Lee didn't understand why the damned witchfinders were after him. Marquis Christopher thought he was hiding who he was. This angered Gale Lee since he had Leo in front of him. He didn't mention his royal ancestry either. He replied that the situation demanded it and introduced himself. The knights who stood behind him were the knights of the kingdom of Kudrin. The Lion Guard. He is the 2nd prince of the state of Kudrin. Leonard von Kudrin. It's a good thing he told me about it now. Julie remarked the magical blow badly injured Making and Pomsaveta. Alicia tried to heal them with divine power. Looking at the senseless bodies of his friends, Julie asked Marquis Christopher, did he know that he could send innocent people to the grave? Marquis Christopher replied that he had used only a fraction of his power to cripple and then interrogate them. This angered Goalie, because that older man almost sent him to the grave himself. Marquis Christopher shrugged his shoulders. He wanted to send Gile Lee to the other world while he was weak, but Gile Lee seemed too aggressive to him. Macon finally woke up. He asked what the black magician was doing here. Leo came up to him. He apologized and said there had been a misunderstanding, that Leo was the heir to the Lionheart. Surprised Macon too. Leo suggested they socialize without ceremony, and not make a big deal out of it. Meanwhile, Gile Lee woke up Pom Savita. Kitty, 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 get up. When Pom Savita woke up, Gile Lee sat next to her and warned her not to be surprised because of a slight misunderstanding, but still seeing Marquis Christopher. Pom Savita, she jumped up and ran away, screaming that she didn't want compensation for the risk. Lucy found her, and Pom Savita later explained that she wasn't running away. It was just a tactical retreat. They seemed to have everything sorted out and were ready to go. They were on their way back to La Rochelle when everyone gathered. There wasn't enough horse for Gully. He was confused. The Marquis Christopher invited him to sit on the back of the horse. He was curious to ask Gully many things. The squad moved on and Gul Lee had to listen to many questions. Upon arrival in La Rochelle, the black magician students were handed over to the Royal Security Agency, and Gul Lee asked if they had time to question them. Leo replied that they would be challenged tomorrow. He wondered where Julie and the team would be staying. Megan answered and told him the location of the hotel where they were staying. Leo apologized he had to meet the mayor. Marcus Christopher bade Gully farewell and said he would question him again tomorrow. Sherman, the innkeeper, was overjoyed to see them back. Macon told him they had been gone for days, but it felt like 6 months. Sherman and Little Cat had many questions for the returnees, but they initially tried to make everyone comfortable. Lucy finally made it to the plentiful and delicious meat meal. Pomsaveta kept up with her. She too was enjoying a delicious meal. Gale looked at the chewing girls and realized that he would have already left this world if it hadn't been for Lucy. He remembered how she rushed to his aid. She had rushed to his aid and then alone, holding off the black mage's spell until she was exhausted. If he'd been alone, he'd be resting on his own. He looked at Lucy and realized she had fallen asleep with a sandwich in her teeth. He decided to take her to her room. He took Lucy to her room and put her to bed. He's the reason she's been through all this. He said good night to Lucy. Lucy, he looked at the dragon heart shard in his palm. There was no more light coming from it. But Yo Lee has a terrible headache. It was so bad that he dropped the dragon heart shard and fell to the floor. Lucy's voice woke him up. She told him he was a pervert and to go to his room. He didn't immediately realize how he'd gotten here. Then he realized that he had felt the absorption of the heart shard. He remembered a pain similar to the one he'd felt when Serpires had trained him. Remembered the arch-lion the heart shard had stored magic techniques. And it was good that everything had worked itself out, because Gully didn't know how to absorb the power from the heart shard. It would have to be sorted out later, even though Gully didn't want to feel that pain again. A pillow flew into Juliet, and Lucy sternly ordered her to get out of her room. Immediately as he was leaving, Juliet turned to Lucy, thanked her for today, and said goodnight. Lucy looked at him in surprise. For a delicious breakfast. Gul Li got up, satisfied he was finally able to get a good night's sleep in bed. At breakfast, Gul Li talked to Majin. They couldn't imagine that Leo would be the second prince. Makan told them in the kingdom of Kudrin, the coronation process is a painstaking endeavor. Prince Lionheart is the son of a concubine. He has a reputation for being a sound mind and a good man. But the queen had a son. He was 7 years old at the time. His name was John. He was weak, timid, and very picky when Leo was old enough to be crowned prince. The nobles fought over who to support in such a situation. King Rakia could not decide who to crown. The reason was that John was growing up. To avoid being the cause of strife, Leo relinquished the crown and gave it to a direct heir. This made John the first prince, and the strife in the kingdom subsided. However, many of the nobles had their doubts. From that moment on, Leo stopped attending official events to study etiquette and politics, and started going outside the palace to drink and fight. Since then, Leo has been known as a willful troublemaker. Leo came to their table and apologized for being late. He sat down and began to talk. He's back from the Royal Security Agency. They started the interrogation yesterday, and planned to finish it in the morning. The attackers were mercenaries. They knew nothing. Even the fact that the witch-finders gave the order had only recently been realized. His usual attitude of working for money and remaining reliant on black magician disciples added to Gully's thoughts. Leo got a little confused. They had a problem, because the black magician's disciples in the prison had died at night. That surprised Yuli, because there were guards in the prison, and Leo had put extra guards on them. However, they still went to the other side. After the holy battle, they realized that black magicians could do things from a distance. Gilly was curious about what happened in the mountains, how the black magicians find mines with mana stones that have never been seen before. The girls listened with interest. They also left their territory to find Jewel Li and avenge the lost mana mines. Marquis Christopher added, rumored to be the Dark Gate, their vast sorcerers association. If it's the Dark Gate, Alicia didn't finish her sentence, but thought about it. On the one hand, information about the Darkness Gate was considered a rumor, but on the other hand, the number of disappearances in remote areas increased tenfold. Maybe they were monsters, but there's a chance that people were kidnapped for sacrifice. For such an organization to exist, someone has to run the witch doctors. And Gilly remembered the black magician saying he was following his orders. Marquis Christopher was outraged by the witch blades, who were nothing without stolen demonic power. They follow his orders and do as they please. If one of the black mages is caught by the Marquis, he guarantees that the exit to the afterlife will be terrible. The girls, especially Palm Savita, resented the noise that kept them from eating. Marcus Christopher slammed his palm on the table and offered Gao Li to be his disciple. The latter was surprised. The magician continued. He has a couple of students to whom he imparts limited knowledge, but he doesn't have a student to whom he can teach everything. Julie offers to be that student. Alicia was happy for Julie. She had heard that mages were reluctant to pass on their knowledge, but he was offered an apprenticeship by the court mage himself. If this gentleman trains Gully, he can become a court magician. Pam Savetta was happy. She added that she's friends with the guy, and even helped him enter and exit the fairy tale forest. 3 men entered the inn. One of them turned to Pam Savita. He thought she'd run away long ago, but she's hiding here like a stray cat, and advised her to follow him. Silently he commanded Pam Savita who he is. Gulia asked him. Pam Savit told him that they were Stefan's pawns. The Leo Knights here drew their swords, and pointed them at the newcomers. They were confused. They didn't understand who the armed men were, and Gully asked Leo to wait a little while before entering the courtyard. They needed to sort things out. He said they'd wait outside. If there's anything, call them. Pam Savita asked what was going on. She was told that the boss had ordered her to be brought in, since he'd heard she'd recently returned from the fairy tale forest. What does he care about where Pom Savita came back from? At the time, Pom Savita was working for Gil Lee, and Gil Lee declared to everyone that no one could take her away. Whenever they wanted, he went on. He said he had business with their boss, and that they would see him soon. In the meantime, they were having breakfast, so the bandits should leave. The bandit Sultan was enraged by this statement and swung his fist at Gully, but Lucy beat him to it with a crunch, stamping her foot into Sultan's face. This action angered the new visitors to the hotel. A vast muscular figure tower, or behind him with a bum sound. A giant fist slammed into the new visitor's head. Meekin turned to the defeated man and complained that he was rude to people trying to eat. Sherman added that they should not break anything. The new arrivals were asked what these wimps hoped for when they came here. In response, the last of the arrivals shouted. They were Boss Stephen's cronies and were not to be forgotten. Stephen's associates were invited to come in with a bunch of their kind, and Gil Lee said they'd only get the Pom Savita through our lifeless bodies. The bandit ran, screaming and cursing to report to Stephen what had happened, and he left his comrades behind. Julie didn't understand and reminded him. Sherman warned them that fighting Stephen and his men was dangerous, as they were connected to the bloody mercenaries of the Hines family. They asked Pomsaveta what she thought. At first she thought she would leave La Rochelle, and then it would be hard for them to find her. But it looks like an escape. She was duped and had to pay them. Plus, there was the situation with her father. She wasn't going to leave the bandits alone until she kicked their asses. Gil Lee and the rest of the group agreed. They decided to prepare for a battle with Stephen and his faction. The hotel door swung open with a bang. "Careful of the door," shouted Sherman. A crowd of stern and determined gunmen stood on the threshold. "They came a little sooner than we thought," Gilly remarked. Sherman reminded him that fighting was great, but not to break anything. Ask one of the action movies Pomsaveta. Is this all about her? She said she was finished and had to go with them. She replied that she didn't understand why they kept saying the same thing. The militant was outraged, and then Gilly threw a glass of water in the face of the hot-headed militant and told him to cool down and stop talking nonsense. The gunman decided that these youngsters had decided to retire, so he ordered the others to take care of it. The militia all rushed into action to deal with the bratty kids, but a Mackin they'd never seen before got in the way. The boys stood in a tight group, shoulder to shoulder with Pom Civet. Alicia said she couldn't believe everyone had decided to attack the weaker-looking ones. One of the thugs came at her and told her to behave, and took a swing at her. Alicia responded by blocking his arm at a painful point, near the elbow crease. The gunman didn't expect to meet resistance from the innocent-looking. Alicia kicked the gunman in the groin next. He was in a lot of pain. The militant leaders are surprised too. One was astonished that Alicia resisted. Another screamed, "Why can't they control the children?" Scattering the fighters, Lucy resented it. She didn't like being called a child. Some of the thugs are realizing that these kids are much stronger than they look. Standing over the defeated, crawling militants, Pom Shavetta shouted what was wrong with them and where had their fighting spirit gone. The gunman Mackin was holding in the air was calling for help. Mackin didn't advise him to ignore it. Another gunman swooped down on Mackin with a stool in his hands, and a shout from behind. Sherman neutralized him with a blow to the head with a jug, with a recommendation not to do any damage to the property. After watching Sherman's dashing assault on the militants, Gil Lee thought it was okay for Sherman to break property, or maybe it's his way of relieving the stress of running a business. Julie continued to think. Meanwhile, he was attacked from behind by a gunman, without even looking back. Gilly hit him with a lightning spell. He advised the downed gunman to run and call for help quickly. Run and call the other guys. And the militants ran away, screaming that they'd show more. Let no one go anywhere and wait for them here. Gilly promised them they wouldn't leave. The hotel door opened with a bang. Sherman shouted for the door to be handled carefully. Gul Lee asked why it was taking so long, since they were already waiting for them. Mercenaries entered the inn and asked if they were waiting for Stephen's men. "Don't let them think they're getting out of here alive enough," said the man who appeared behind the backs of the mercenaries. Finally showed up, said Pom Savita. Julie asked her if it was Stefan from the doorstep. Stefan chided Palm Savita for the outrage, and said he would ignore it if she went with him now. And Julie suggested that he forget about Palm Savit altogether. It was impossible because she owed too much. When asked how much she owed, answered Palm Savita herself. 3,000 gold pieces. It's all because of them, since it was not normal to charge 30% interest on a loan. But Julie suggested that the debt was an excuse. The main reason is the fairy forest. It doesn't make sense for them to take the Palm Savita because of one debt, said Julie. The one who confirmed that Julie is right, and he needs to go to the fairy tale forest. And Gylie told him they knew about the situation, including Stefan threatening Camille. He denied everything and disagreed. But Julie said that the Fairy Queen had told them personally. But Stefan didn't agree and said the Fey Queen was bullshit. He had an offer. He ordered Calvino's leaves to be brought to him from the fairy forest. Mackin explained it to them. He said it's an antiseptic plant used as an anesthetic or drug. Stephen kept raising the price. He said they needed to bring the Fairy Queen. Whether undead or alive, she'd be valuable either way if he did. That he'd cancel all his debts. Next to Gil, Lucy scolded. They asked if Stefan seriously thought they would accept his proposal. He said that there was no other choice, and gave the mercenaries a command to attack. Gail Lee tied the mercenaries with restraining threads, and told Lucy that Stefan would not be missed. She knew it herself, and Stefan commanded that everyone but Palm Savita be sent to the afterlife. An enraged Palm Savit dived at Stefan. She screamed at him that he was a fat pig, and with a jumping leg kick to the head, Palm Savita knocked Stefan off his feet. Palm Savita told Stefan he's not going to get away with it now. He's crazy about money. The door rattled open again. Stefan was about to become indignant, but men from the Royal Security Agency burst into the hotel. Lieutenant Guilford, everybody stay where you are. Commanding officer. After that, Stefan suggested we discuss it peacefully. She disagreed to begin with. Julie suggested that Palm Savita followed the orders of the security agency. What the hell is going on here? Lieutenant Guilford asked them. And then Stefan complained that he'd been captured, and was about to be sent to the afterlife. That angered Julie. Palm Savita said that Stephen was paying a lot of money to the people in the security department, and they were all in on it. Lieutenant Guilford ordered the arrest of everyone, but Stephen and his men. But Gil Lee wouldn't calm down and contradicted him. He said it wasn't them who started the riot, but Stephen's men. They were defending themselves. But Lieutenant Guilford wouldn't listen to him, and resented how he dared to cross the Royal Security Agency. Leo came into the room, and said it was unfair that only one side was being heard. Behind him stood Sir Tom Ford and the Marquis Christopher. Leo said he had seen that those they were protecting had attacked first, and those trying to be arrested were in self-defense. He said that mercenaries have no right to attack civilians on the premises. Standing in the inn courtyard, Leo and his cronies could hear everything being talked about in the inn and the loan and Stefan's order. Lieutenant Guilford resented Leo's words. What did he know if he had just walked in here? One of the gunmen said Leo had been here before, and they were in the same gang. Then Lieutenant Guilford accused Julie of conspiring, and ordered everyone arrested. Sir Tom Ford ordered everyone to stand. Turning to the lieutenant, he asked Guilford if he knew to whom he spoke, and whom he wished to arrest. Instead of Guilford, Stephen said Leo was the son of a bankrupt aristocrat, and Lieutenant Guilford said he had the right to arrest anyone. Then Leo asked him if this rule applied to the royal family. Stephen answered him again. He said there was no point in a royal family member coming here. Lieutenant Guilford was approached by a subordinate, and informed that the situation outside required his intervention. Outside the inn, his soldiers were surrounded by a detachment of the Lion Guard, commanded by Marshal Brown. When he saw the lieutenant, he said that Lieutenant Guilford must be out of his mind to raise a sword against the prince and want his head taken off. Lieutenant Guilford hastened to repent to Prince Leo, saying he had sinned and deserved to go to the next world. Prince Leonard accused Lieutenant Guilford and his men of trying to arrest innocent people because of Stephen's false accusation. It looks like Lieutenant Guilford was repeatedly bribed. He's investigating Stefan's involvement in narcotics distribution. Leo also instructed us to go to Stefan's immediately, to search and seize suspicious items. And Palm Savita was enjoying the situation. She was enjoying watching Stefan's collapse. She's been through a lot working for this man. She thanked Leo when they took Stefan to jail. Even though they said they could handle it independently, they couldn't have done it without Leo's help. Giuliani thanked Leo too, but Leo was pleased too, because they prevented the distribution of illegal substances. Marquis Christopher came up behind the talking Gully and Leo, and sternly asked Gully when he would wait for Gully to answer. He refused, explaining that he was on a mission assigned by his teacher, and that he must do what the teacher told him to do. However, Gully thought he would have to practice hardening himself, remembering that he would have to master the knowledge for the 6th grade. Gil Lee's refusal to become an apprentice upset Marquis Christopher. He thought he had finally met a worthy boy. They were planning to move on. Leo asked them where they were going next. Macon told him they were going to Crownus. They were thinking of leaving tomorrow. Goli told me that it was a city of the Holy Church, and that Elysia had business there. Leo told them to be careful, and that the bad guys arrested today were not to be feared. And then Goli remembered something. He explained his thoughts. If the Dark Gate organization existed, someone was mining mana stones. The black mages are after him, because he robbed them of one of these mines. Then Leo summarized his thoughts. Gil Lee wanted to tell them that black mages occupied mines, similar to those in other kingdoms. Maybe they are going to summon demons with mana stones. Gil Lee continued to speculate. His interlocutors were outraged. They said it was nonsense and that it was impossible to summon demons. Even Leo told him he had gone too far. Joel Lee didn't insist on his theory. He just mentioned demons and got such a sharp reaction. Joel Lee was thinking when Pom Savita called out to him. She told him that her work was done. He asked what she was going to do next. She had no idea what she was going to do now. Then he asked if she had thought of leaving here. Pom Savita thought for a moment. La Rochelle is her hometown. Even though everything was horrible, this was her home, and the thought of leaving never crossed her mind. She said goodbye and wished them all good luck on their future travels. As she was leaving, Gilly shouted after her that they were leaving tomorrow. They planned to leave the city through the East Gate. Making added for her, and Alicia added that they would see each other. Looking at the perfectly repaired carriage, Gally was pleased. Alicia told him that they would arrive at Kronga's before evening. As the innkeepers bid farewell, Maken regretted having caused them so much inconvenience. Sherman reassured him that they had received a reward from the prince. They already thought Pom Savita wouldn't come. Maken offered to wait a little longer, but Julie said to go. He mentally wished Pom Savita good luck, wishing her to finish her thievery and start her life anew. His thoughts were interrupted by the voice of Pom Savita, who was hurrying the departure because she was bored. The voice came from the roof of the carriage. She explained her appearance. He had bailed her out of custody after paying her bail. She thought about it and remembered that she was due in court today. She was afraid of being captured and decided to leave. Lucy didn't fall for this story and wanted to go with them now that they were all assembled. They got in the carriage and set off for Krongas. On the road, Lucy was glad to visit Krongas, which she had read about in a book. It was said to have one of the best buildings built by humans. Xiao Lee thought about how long it had been since he heard about this book. He noticed that Pom Savit was worried about something, and told her not to worry, because all the guards were probably busy with Stefan and his men. She said she didn't tell him anything. They found out that her father gave her the name Pom Shavetta, because she's half Miao, an ethnic group. They asked if Pom Shavetta had ever been to Krongas. It was close to La Rochelle. She replied that she served Marinka, the goddess of dew and good luck, so she did not need to visit that place. The goddess Marinka was the goddess of thieves and treasure hunters. For Alicia, this goddess was not respected. The girls got into a heated argument, shouting over each other. Makan listened philosophically to the girls' clamor. Julie tried to calm them down by telling them that the gods they believed in were good, but it didn't help then. He decided to switch girls, and asked what the meaning of the name of the town of Crown Gas was. That's the story Alicia started to tell. There was a village called Atland. A terrible disease struck the locals. Then, a girl named Elena climbed a nearby hill and began to pray to the sky. One day a goose with a crown on his head appeared in the sky, and said that her prayers had been answered. From now on she would be the messenger of his will on earth.
Ons en revive
saying that a goose with a crown on its head doesn't make sense. But Alicia argued that afterward Helena taught the locals healing. Alicia was an orphan dropped off in a sack at the temple. She was raised and educated by nuns, which is why she knows so much. He didn't know that and apologized for his possibly tactless question. But Alicia reassured him that it was all right, and assumed he was just like her. It was an awkward question for Gilly, so he decided to keep it simple. He said that Lucy's father had taken care of him, and that he had met a teacher. He thought he'd be a little more likely to fail. If his parents heard that lie, their faces would turn pale. "We need to return home soon." A question came from the carriage as to what was wrong with Gully's facial expression. Jael and Lucy looked at the temple with rapt attention. The great temple of God's crown gas. It was huge now. Lucy understood why. They called it one of the 7 significant buildings. 2 novices met them at the temple entrance. They apologized and said that the temple was closing. They asked if the travelers could come back tomorrow. Alicia came forward and gave her name. She said they had come to meet High Priest Hamel. The novices looked at each other and said they would inform him of her arrival. He offered to escort Alicia to her chambers. Jae-Will Lee, who was watching the meeting, noticed the novices' attitudes changed when they heard Alicia's name. They were served vegetarian dishes for dinner, and Pom Savita and Lucy were disappointed and hungry. There were no meat dishes on the table. A high-ranking priest entered the room and greeted Megan and Alicia cheerfully. His name was Hamel. McCann greeted him in a friendly manner and Alicia called him Mr. Hamel. He said he remembered Alicia as a child. Now she's grown up. Julie looked at them and wondered why McCann was only friends with big guys who looked like mob bosses. And Hamel continued to talk to Alicia and Mackin. He asked Alicia if she had found a lover. He asked Mackin if Hamel had read his letter. Hamel read the letter and regretted that their mutual friend had left. He asked about the donation. It turned out that Prince Kadrina had donated a large sum of money in Alicia's name. Rumors circulated that she was the illegitimate daughter of the royal family. Apparently it was Leo's reward for saving Alicia's life, which is why the 2 who met them changed their attitude when they recognized Alicia. And Hamel wanted to hear all about what the Mac want, and Alicia had been up to all this time. After listening to their story, Hamel summarized that they had escaped from the Black Mages, which was why they had come here. But Alicia objected that they had come for another reason. She thought she was having a vision. Hamel said that the Holy Father had warned that one day there would be one who would be visited by Providence. He immediately went to call the Holy Father. When Alicia objected to the hour's lateness, he added that she should just wait. He went straight after the Holy Father. Alicia was nervous that she might make a false prediction. The door opened, and an elderly man dressed in pajamas ran into the room exclaiming, "This is the place." The kindly Gao Li told Grandpa that the toilet was at the end of the corridor. But the Holy Father wasn't looking for the toilet, but for Alicia. Bowing to her grandfather, Alicia said a ceremonial greeting to him. Julie was surprised that this man was the Holy Father. Hamel came over and said that getting dressed was still worth it. The Holy Father asked Alicia to provide details about her visions, which occurred while she was on the convent's property. He was sure that Alethea had real prophetic visions. "I asked her to recall the details of the prophecy she'd seen." Alicia plunged into the memory. "Living creatures but no longer alive. They follow those who are no longer alive but are still alive. Those who are no longer alive do not exist in this world, but they want to. Those who don't exist in this world but want to exist are too many. Only one door can let them in. If it opens, the whole world will disappear." Gao Li didn't understand anything that was said to him. It was a set of meaningless phrases. But the priest sat there, looking like they understood what was being said. The Holy Father was sure it was a divination. He asked Alicia if she remembered when it came to her. She prayed at night and suddenly a light came upon her. Then she went towards it and saw a silhouette not far away. Her intuition told her it was the light. Then she suddenly regained consciousness and was in her bed. But it was too real to be a dream. Then she thought it might be a vision. Since then her skills and divine power have significantly improved, and Macon added that up to that point, they had saved many people from death. Hamel admitted that Alicia had reached the level of a high priest. They were interrupted by Gully, saying they needed someone to understand the prediction. Then the Holy Father remembered that they hadn't met, and that he didn't know who the young man in front of him was. The Holy Father asked everyone if they had remembered the prediction. Correctly, the girls answered in different ways. Pam Savita answered incomprehensibly, and Lucy said it was easy, and Yuli said he can't remember the predictions accurately. Then the Holy Father told them that he thought the prediction was closely related to what was happening. Now he thought it had to do with magicians, who wanted disturbance and confusion. Now the danger to them is almost gone. But they say Saint Amelia's credibility plummeted. Right after the holy battle, Kuni said darkness is born of light, and the end of life is the beginning, not the end. But all who were happy to win the long war did not report the prophecy. The seer became a secret that was only told to the great emperor. Hence the church has not yet ended the magician's threat. According to the Holy Father, they must prepare to fight the new darkness. A few years ago, a systematic movement of mages was discovered everywhere. Gao Li asked him about the dark gate he was referring to. The Holy Father then asked him how Gao Li knew about it. He replied that he had a bad relationship with the dark gate. The priests told Elise she'd gotten carried away with her work in the Bane Mountains. She was glad she hadn't had time to finish her mission there. The priest discussed that even if one signed a contract with a high-ranking Aubrey demon tribe, it was still difficult to become a mage. Have suggested that perhaps the black magicians have already taken over the royalty and nobility of every country. But McCann suggested that this conspiracy theory was overdue. If someone is known to be involved with black magic, their honor and life will be forfeited. Why would they be drawn there? Pomsaveta didn't understand. People who have nothing to regret should stick together. Does the Holy Father know what he wants? Said Gulia, and the Holy Father thought for a moment. They didn't know what the black magicians had done to Kudrin's kingdom. It's the first time they've seen anything like this. In the kingdom of Aloan, then the kingdom of Kudrin is also in danger. Sir Leo could help them, so they decided to tell him secretly that he was in danger. Those who are alive but not alive at the same time are probably witchcraft mages who have sold their souls to demons. The Holy Father pondered over the prophecy. Who's not alive and who's not? It's probably the undead. They went to the other world and then came back. They solved everything, including the riddle of the prophecy. There's no point in going to the other world and being resurrected. He doesn't exist in this world. Regarding the head of the great dark gate, who he wants to be in that world, he probably wants to be king. And the Holy Father assumed he was a high-ranking demon. Since the contract with Demon King Ragdam failed, no one has been able to lead the dark gate. Another phrase, they exist in this world. But they don't exist. They started discussing the next phrase, and Gilly thought that this phrase seemed to be about him. Asmodeans are demons, they pondered. It was unlikely, since the demons and monsters that had appeared during the battle were no longer in the castle. But someone is not from our world. And Jill Lee took it personally. They wondered what that phrase could mean. And Jill Lee took every word he said personally. Nothing completed, nothing begun. Alicia continued to ponder. She wondered what it meant. And I've concluded that they want to destroy the world. She decided that the existence of another world wouldn't matter if it were like this one, and concluded that it was more dangerous than demons. And Pom Savita said she should capture and send the villain to the other side of the world. At that moment Julie's throat was tight and frightened. Makhan asked him what he was mumbling to himself, but Julie said he was hiccuping. Julie thought that he should return home soon for his safety.